Chapter 1092. Han Fei frowned. The array at the bottom of the ship had been mostly damaged. Some places had already been damaged. Because they were fighting around the hull, the human beings were in a passive position. Therefore, many people had died in the battle. Han Fei couldn't fight in the sky above the sea. He could only see through his perception that it was a half-mermaid riding on a serpent, raising waves with its harpoon. However, the human beings didn't seem weak either. Someone was standing on a lobster, surrounded by 100 swords. The shadows of the swords cut the void, and the sky was full of swords. The two sides were locked in a fierce battle and soon got out of the range of the hull. Han Fei's heart sank. The battle in the water was even more fierce than on the ship. Han Fei's eyes turned cold, and the infinite water turned into thousands of knives. The seawater surged, and the knives began to spin like a storm in the water. "Oh! Kill that man!" A half-mermaid roared and pierced the void with her harpoon. In Han Fei's perception, about dozens of kilometers away, a real mermaid was pointing a long whip at him. Then, Han Fei saw two clam girls jumping at him. Han Fei sneered. "You want two clam girls to come here? Who are you looking down on?" At the bottom of the sea, Han Fei was slaughtering everyone. The shrimp soldiers, crab generals, and sea creatures whose realms were suppressed were almost no match for him. Wherever the infinite water passed, blood splashed. On the human side, many people seemed to be greatly motivated by Han Fei's strength. Someone shouted, "Good, good, good. He's indeed a heavenly talent of the human race. Kill him." Someone grinned with fanatical eyes. "Let's go. I want one of the two clam girls." A manipulator summoned infinite seaweed and threw it at the clam girl, as if to buy time for Han Fei. Han Fei's figure flashed on the bottom of the sea. Wherever he passed, thousands of knives followed him. His invincible fighting intent dyed the bottom of the sea gold. The two clam girls let out sharp screams at the same time. The weird sound echoed. Many people on the bottom of the sea, including the shrimp soldiers, were holding their heads and struggling to resist. Han Fei suddenly felt that something was wrong, and Little Black and Little White immediately attached to him. Then he saw thousands of tiny invisible threads trying to control him. The two who went to stop the clam girls were both stiff at this moment. At the last moment, both of them shouted at the same time, "Explode!" Choosing to self-destruct was the only thing they could do. Sometimes, the strength of one's combat skills could not determine the outcome of a battle. Sea creatures were different from humans. They had some unique talents. Han Fei's face couldn't have looked more awful. "You're courting death." Han Fei's figure swam like a fish dragon, ignoring the creepy sound and rushing out. From afar, the void lines circled around him as the sacrificial punch blasted out. The two clam demons closed their shells at the same time and even spun themselves at Han Fei. Bang! However, they underestimated Han Fei's power. Under the rebound of the formation, the two clam girls smashed into the seabed like cannonballs, creating two large pits on the seabed. One of them bore most of the power of the sacrificing punch. The clam girl inside was probably stunned by the impact as her shell was slightly open. The void lines took the opportunity to cut into the shell, and Han Fei's knife sank into the shell, splitting it into two pieces. Boom, boom, boom. In Han Fei's hands, two sledgehammers appeared out of thin air. At this moment he hammered the other shell again and again. "You're courting death." In the distance, the mermaid who seemed to be the commander rushed over like a shuttling swordfish. Han Fei suddenly grinned and looked up at her. An array emerged on the two hammers. Boom! Gotcha! Han Fei did it on purpose. "Are your clam girls very strong? It's not like I haven't killed one before. What else can you do except that your shell is hard? Do you really think I'm still a junior hidden fisher?" Throwing away the sledgehammers, Han Fei took out a kitchen knife. Looking at the mermaid who was much weaker than Xia Shaochen, he said, "Or should I call you a mermaid? I'd like to see how strong the legendary mermaids are." Chilla! The knife slashed out, and the seawater seemed to be cut in half by a white mark. Ignorant human beings, you can't escape the fate of extinction. Puff! A big bubble appeared. There was no telling whether it was an ability or something else. The bubble was so dented that both sides were stuck together, but it wasn't broken. A strange song sounded at the bottom of the sea. The scene around Han Fei suddenly changed. Even though he had the yin-yang divine eyes, the scene had changed. Wait, a big bubble was pulled out of the battlefield by itself? Han Fei found it very quickly. He didn't know what kind of power the mermaid had used to pull Han Fei and herself out of the battlefield. Demon, what's the deep hatred between humans and mermaids? Why are you fighting each other like this? Han Fei pretended to be angry, but in fact, he wanted to get information out of her. As he spoke, the million knife art appeared again, cutting the water balls layer by layer. Han Fei's perception scanned and found that he had been taken more than 30 kilometers away. The woman opposite him sneered. In the competition of power, there is only life and death. There is no why. As she spoke, the long whip in the woman's hand broke through the seawater and lashed at Han Fei like a scaled giant snake. The whip was intimidating. Han Fei bared his teeth, stepped on the coiled turtle array, and held the long whip with one hand. Han Fei frowned slightly. His palm was pierced? However, Han Fei didn't panic. Such a minor injury was nothing to him. As Han Fei pulled, billowing spiritual energy surged along the long whip to the mermaid. Boom! Under the spiritual energy explosion, the void lines were launched and Han Fei's figure flashed away. He saw that the mermaid was wrapped in a bubble and was completely fine. Soul attack. You're indeed a top heavenly talent of the human race, but you can't save humans. The trend of the way of heaven is irreversible. Water balls only the size of a fist emerged in the seawater. As soon as they appeared, there were thousands of them, and they all swept at Han Fei like a bombardment. Han Fei took out the embroidery needle and launched the Monkey King 3000 strikes. At this moment, Han Fei was like a ferocious man who was going against the wind. The rod shadows had long disappeared, and there were continuous explosions around him, but none of them could stop Han Fei's footsteps. The mermaid abandoned the long whip, but there was a long spear in her hand. She slapped her tail, and waves surged behind her, as if the sea behind her were all supported by her strength. Han Fei grinned. In his perception, the two bastards from the big clans had begun to slip away and were fighting further and further away. Han Fei said to them via voice transmission, "Why are you two running? Come and help." As soon as Han Fei's voice transmission came out, someone immediately noticed them. Because Han Fei really fought hard, and everyone could see that. The two kids from the big clans were fighting further and further away, immediately attracting the attention of others. Someone shouted in a low voice, "Anyone who escapes will die." Han Fei sneered. "Want to leave? Did I say you could leave?" The two of them gnashed their teeth in anger. However, they were also quite shocked. Han Fei's perception had reached 100 kilometers? On Han Fei's side, the mermaid seemed to have condensed the power of the sea, so Han Fei didn't dare to underestimate her. The Monkey King 10,000 strikes was suitable for fighting, but not for fighting to the death. Since the void lines couldn't control the opponent, he would attack with all his strength. The sea waves around him rose into the air. Sacrifice. Suddenly, Han Fei's face changed, because there was a finger pointing at him in the air. Damn it. Han Fei's face changed drastically. He had thought that this woman's desperate attack was just to fight him, but it turned out that she had a scheme. Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel. All of a sudden, a formation diagram appeared. Han Fei disappeared and turned into a map, fusing with little black and little white. In this realm, once he died, he would really die. Han Fei didn't want to take this bet. The appearance of the yin-yang patterns somehow caused the sea to move and the soul power from all directions gathered. Swished, whether it was the power of the spear or the finger, they all ignited dazzling flames at the edge of the array map, but they couldn't go any further. Gotcha! Gotcha! The array map flickered in the air and appeared in front of the mermaid. Puff! So what if he was a law enforcer? Since he was risking his life, he had to be thorough. At that moment, Han Fei was completely locked on. He only had two choices, either to use the Demon King's contract or to launch a fierce attack. The only way to deal with the sacrificing punch was to combine and open the map. This was also one of Han Fei's strongest moves. Back then, Han Fei could shake Chao Chiu, and today, he could shake these two people. Sure enough, as soon as this map appeared, everyone's eyes gathered here. The mermaid was turned by the yin-yang pattern and was directly cut down under it. The finger was also shattered inch by inch. Some strong masters were rescuing Han Fei. They were shocked that the human race had such a heavenly talent. However, someone shouted, "How can you touch the heavenly talent of the human race?" In the deep sea, a big octopus aimed at Han Fei. However, someone directly burned his bloodline and life, shouting angrily, "Go to hell." Han Fei was like a fuse. Perhaps because of his identity as a heavenly talent, both the Sea Clan and the human race exploded. For a moment, the sky was full of killing intent, and the battle was fierce. Han Fei, on the other hand, fought unscrupulously in the sea for a while. He was trying to control his thoughts. The state of the supreme yin-yang wheel was very strange and difficult to control. It would occupy his consciousness. In his body, a black thread was struggling as if trying to break the shackles. Little Black's tyranny made him confused. In the end, it was the demon purification pot that shook and Han Fei was freed from the yin-yang pattern. However, when Han Fei returned to his original body, he was surprised to find that there was no war here. The sea was full of broken wood chips. As far as his eyes could see, broken corpses floated in the sea, and blood flowed along the seawater, dyeing the sea red and reaching the sky. Han Fei didn't even know what happened. The battle was over? Han Fei flew in the sky alone. In the sky, the setting sun was like blood. On the sea, there was no one, not even a living creature nearby. No, something's wrong. Chapter 1093. Han Fei frowned. That's impossible. The war had just started. He had the experience of fusing with Little Black and Little White before. Although he used the supreme yin-yang image this time, the battle shouldn't have ended so quickly. In order to cause such a completely destructive battle, there must be a strong master, right? If there was a strong master, why didn't they attack him? It seemed that Han Fei was the only one left in the world. There was no one within Han Fei's perception range. Wait, where did those two people go? Han Fei's perception swept around. There were no corpses here that belonged to those two people. Were they killed? No, they are children of big clans. Since they dare to enter the War Soul realm, how can they be incompetent? Did these two people run away? However, Han Fei didn't think it was very likely. If they ran away, it at least meant that they fought to the end. So in the end, no one cared about them. Oh no. Why do I feel that these people have been dead for a long time? Han Fei frowned and suddenly felt that something was wrong. These people seemed to have been dead for a while and didn't seem to have just died. Could it be that a long time had passed when I changed the image? Wow! A weird idea suddenly came to Han Fei's mind. Does this battle really exist? Han Fei swallowed. He didn't dare to admit the idea in his heart. If this battle didn't exist, then what did he encounter? He even talked to them, even talked to that mermaid, fought to the death. Everything was just too real. Illusion. Han Fei pondered. If it's an illusion, can the people in the illusion have thoughts? Han Fei remembered what Diwu Hazy Light said. How can you tell if a person is an outsider? You just need to see if there is a dead air on them. Or, in fact, those people have already died. And this world was just playing out an endless war? What's the purpose? Han Fei couldn't figure it out. If he didn't die, then were the two people from the big families still alive? Han Fei flew back in the direction from which he came, expressionless. What if what he encountered at the beginning was not a group of dead, undying souls? After all, the demon purification pot didn't seem to be suitable here, and he couldn't see any information. However, Han Fei had never seen such an immortal hero soul. It was almost no different from a human being. Or could it be that his previous state had allowed him to escape from the battle itself in the chaos? So, that war had nothing to do with him? So, the two from the aristocratic families weren't actually running away, but trying to leave the battlefield? Once he stood on the sidelines, he would have nothing to do with the battlefield, and the battle would automatically evolve? What a terrifying rule. Han Fei rushed in the direction where he came from. He was thinking, if the two of them were not dead, Could he catch up with them? However, after about 4 hours, Han Fei suddenly had a hunch that something was wrong. Han Fei had just stopped over the sea. A silver light flashed in the void. Because the speed was too fast, Han Fei grabbed the blood-drinking knife, blocked it with a swish, and took the opportunity to flash 100 meters away. Peng peng! The surface of the water exploded, and 5 gorgeous red flowers stretched out. Vines like slender snakes appeared from Han Fei's wrists and neck. Humph! Han Fei shook his body and shattered those little snakes. Looking at the pistols that drilled into his body, he waved his hand and used the million knife art to cut the vines. However, in this short period of time, Han Fei found that a large array had been set up. A trap and kill array. Han Fei smiled. You want to play arrays with me? At the moment the array appeared, an identical reverse array was quickly outlined. Han Fei stepped on the coiled turtle array and could crack it in less than 2 seconds. However, at this time, a huge hammer shadow appeared in the void and smashed at Han Fei like a meteorite. Yang Nanshi? Han Fei raised his head, and an array appeared on his fist mark. He activated the devil change and launched the sacrificing punch. Who told you that I can't fight when I'm setting up an array? Clanged golden ripples were rippling, and the sea was sunken. Han Fei stood proudly in the void and controlled the million knife art to strangle the manipulator. The previous hunter appeared under Han Fei, and the silver light stabbed up from below. Oh! Han Fei flickered left and right, activated the 9 Mansions Dragon chant and the law of gravity at the same time, and the void lines darted at the enemy like lightning. However, the hunter's body flashed, twisted the space, and appeared elsewhere. Yi family, star teleportation technique. Bam! At this moment, the array exploded. Han Fei's figure flashed 7 or 8 times in a row, avoiding another array that was about to be formed, and left the battlefield. Han Fei didn't underestimate the number of enemies. At this moment, another hunter appeared, assisted by an armorist's sneak attack. However, to everyone's surprise, a golden light suddenly appeared on Han Fei's body, and he didn't even dodge, letting the hunter slash at his back. Puff! When the bone knife entered his body, the hunter's body suddenly stiffened and he couldn't move. Han Fei stepped on the coiled turtle array and sneered. It seems that you came in a hurry. My guess was right. Those 2 guys shouldn't have left much earlier than me. So, you didn't have time to mobilize a large number of people to kill me. The hunter behind him was naturally under Han Fei's control. The moment she launched an attack, Han Fei knew that this hunter was at least 2 levels weaker than the previous one. That was why Han Fei dared to stay still and scrupulously. Yang Qian, what are you doing? Yang Nanshi appeared, a trace of anger on her face. Han Fei grinned. Are you asking her? Tiske, I don't know if I should tell you. Not many hunters have been able to escape from me in close combat. Fuse. When the yin-yang divine eyes appeared, Han Fei immediately found everyone in some concealment arrays. There were 2 groups in total. Apart from the one under his control, there were only 9 people left. Han Fei murmured, You want to kill me with only 10 people? Who gave you the courage? As soon as Han Fei said that, Yang Nanshi suddenly shouted, Yang Yuan, retreat. However, Yang Nanshi was too late. A terrifying electric arc had already fallen on the armorist. A big golden red shadow appeared. It was none other than Little Gold. The lightning blade, as the ultimate skill of a legendary creature, was not so easy to resist. Unless the opponent's physique could completely resist this terrifying electric current, he would definitely be killed. Otherwise, Han Fei would definitely kill this person. Han Fei was extremely fast. He saw seaweed covering the sky, sword grasses attacking him, and green vines preparing to save people. But no matter how fast they were, how could they be faster than Han Fei, who was at his fastest speed? Mastering the 64-dimensional fish dragon dance had already made Han Fei's speed reach an extreme. Of course, there was a figure faster than Han Fei, and that was the Yi family. The man had already appeared in front of Yang Yuan. Han Fei roared, Seal! An array suddenly rose around the 2 of them. The hunter from the Yi family twisted the space again and disappeared in the array. It was not that he didn't want to save him, but that he couldn't. Han Fei was not slow. If he was trapped for a moment, once Han Fei approached him, he couldn't guarantee that he could survive. The void lines buckled the armorist, and Han Fei punched him, blasting him away. This punch was so heavy that the armorist's bones were all broken. However, in the eyes of the others, they were a little surprised. Why didn't Han Fei just kill him? Did Han Fei underestimate Yang Yuan's physique? In the blink of an eye, Yang Nanshi had already approached him and waved her hammer like a dragon. Han Fei punched back and they exchanged dozens of rounds in an instant. And Yang Yuan had been rescued by the opponent's manipulator. In the battle, Han Fei suddenly grinned. Explode! Yang Nanshi realized something. However, before she said anything, she saw Yang Yuan suddenly explode himself. Then, Han Fei didn't even need to take action himself. The hunter who had been controlled had appeared next to the manipulator at some point. With a cold blade, the manipulator was killed. Yang Nanshi retreated in shock. Not good, Han Fei can control other people's souls. Han Fei grinned. Actually, I'm also very good at setting up arrays. As Han Fei spoke, another trapping array appeared. By the time the opponent's spirit gatherer realized this and wanted to break the array, it was already too late. Taking advantage of Yang Nanshi's strike, Han Fei also retreated. There were two people in the array, two soul warriors. Because the battle happened too fast, they hadn't found a suitable opportunity. As a result, an array was set up around them. When Han Fei came, the two of them had activated all their secret methods and were fighting bloodstained. However, Han Fei smiled. The law of gravity. The void lines appeared again. Han Fei was slightly surprised. One of them actually blocked it. It seemed that he was protected by a soul secret treasure. However, Han Fei didn't mind. He used the draw technique 3 times in a row and cut this person down. Han Fei said leisurely, "Of the 10 people, 5 are gone. I know that the 5 of you are the strongest. These 5 are just temporary, so I'll take them in first." At this moment, Han Fei pointed his finger, and the controlled hunter and soul warrior all rushed to the opponent's spirit gatherer. And he didn't stop and attacked. Han Fei said, "Yang Nanshi, they all say that you are very strong, but I think you don't seem to have any special abilities except for your strength." Yang Nanshi was furious. This time, she had indeed acted rashly. Originally, when she got the news, she thought that since Han Fei was alone, she might have a chance. Besides, she had always wanted to fight Han Fei. Fearing that Han Fei would run away, she brought people here in a hurry. Han Fei actually had so many tricks up his sleeves. In less than 5 breaths of time, 3 people had died, and the other 2 had actually become his puppets. Chapter 1094. Why did Han Fei expose the secret that he could control souls so decisively at this moment? It was because he understood a few things. After leaving the ideal palace, these memories would all be selectively forgotten. There was no need to worry about them being exposed in the outside world. The 5th soul realm, was the last soul realm that most people could force their way through. Including Yang Nanshi, no one had ever reached the 6th soul realm. It could be seen that the 6th and 7th soul realms were not simple. Not just anyone could set foot in them. Since he wasn't afraid of being chased into the 6th soul realm, he might as well fully display the power of the void lines. At the very least, he would be able to kill a few more people and intimidate some people so that they would not dare to make a move. As long as Han Fei could get out of the ideal palace safely this time, he would definitely gain a lot from this trip. He and the others would definitely receive a rapid increase in strength. Not to mention anything else, a peak junior law enforcer was the most basic. At that time, the Thug Academy would completely enter the era of law enforcement. In the law enforcement realm, at least they had the power to protect themselves and could be truly fearless. Even if Yang Nanshi and the others went out, could they really crush the Thug Academy at that time? Not necessarily. Yang Nanshi transmitted, "Qian Wufa, retreat from this battle and go back to look for the others. The others all have divine soul protection power, right?" The person controlling the water transmitted, "Nanshi, are you sure you still want to fight?" Yang Nanshi, fight! The other members of the Thug Academy were not worth worrying about. Since he's alone, we can't let him go. Han Fei saw a male armorist take a deep look at Han Fei and fly away. Han Fei sneered. Ask an armorist to look for help? I thought you would ask that woman from the Yi family to go back and call for help. In Han Fei's eyes, the woman from the Yi family was 500 meters away on his left. The remaining spirit gatherer was holding 2 curved machetes in his hands. Obviously, he found that his attainments in array formations were not as good as Han Fei's, so he was ready to do it himself. As for the manipulator, if Han Fei was right, the manipulator should be stronger than the hunter of the Yi family, second only to Yang Nanshi. Just now, with a sweep of his million-knife art, it seemed that the red flower was cut into pieces. However, at this moment, the surface of the sea was filled with red seeds. He did not know what these seeds were used for. However, he knew that it was definitely not a good thing. If necessary, he would deal with this manipulator first, even more so than Yang Nanshi. Han Fei grinned. But, do you think you can kill me with just 4 people? Clang. Yang Nanshi clasped her hammers together. Her face, which was supposed to be a lowly's, was now fiercely saying, "Of course I won't underestimate you. As long as I can stop you for 2 hours, you'll definitely die." Han Fei narrowed his eyes. Oh really? By the way, Yang Nanshi, I can understand why the Chu sect wants to kill me. I can understand why the Sun family wants to kill me. However, why did your family spend so much effort to kill me? Does killing me mean anything to the Yang family? Yang Nanshi said, "Humph, don't try to fool me. If you die, everything will be fine." Han Fei was not in a hurry. He said slowly, "Can't you just tell me why? If I die, the big families will be able to continue pressuring the Thug Academy and even snatch the star beads. However, do you think that with the intelligence of the Yang family, you'll be able to get a share of the star beads?" Yang Nanshi's face changed drastically. "Are you saying that I have no brain?" Han Fei sneered. "At least, I don't think you have one. Think about it, is the Yang family comparable to the Chu sect or the Chao family? Or the 7 major sects? At the very least, can you beat the Sun family, or are you richer than the Zhang family, or are you more cunning than the Mo family?" Suddenly, a voice said, "Nanshi, don't listen to his nonsense. He's just looking for an opportunity." Han Fei glanced at the sea. "I don't know which family you are from. I'm guessing that with your flirtatious ways, you might be a member of the Mo family. Let's talk about the Mo family. What else does your family have? You can't fight, but you keep asking others to marry into your family. I'm afraid that the Mo family is about to wither, isn't it? Who can your family compare to? Although the Yang family is stupid, they can at least fight. What does your family have?" In the air, red and coquettish flowers bloomed. There were 5 flowers on a vine, and the flowers bloomed, revealing the sharp stamens and the big mouth in the center. Han Fei waved his hand, and the million-knife art rolled up a storm. He stepped on the ground and the coiled turtle array appeared. Han Fei smiled contemptuously. "What's wrong? Are you angry?" Han Fei said, "I haven't finished yet. And the Yi family, this is the most useless family. Except for speed, there's nothing else they can do. Except for speed, they can't do anything else. Even if I die, the star beads of the Thug Academy will be snatched by the big families. Do you think the Yi family can compete with the Chu sect with speed? Believe it or not, they can slap you to death." The hunter didn't speak, but Han Fei keenly saw that her dagger was slightly tilted, as if she was ready to attack at any time. Han Fei said, "Let's put it this way. The big families seem powerful, but in fact, they are just chasing something that even they are not sure about. Do you know why the Chu sect doesn't snatch the sea-quelling painting? Do you know why the Chu sect is so focused on exploring the 1,000-star proving ground? You, including the 7 major sects, don't know anything. What's the difference between you and the iron-headed fish? I'll knock you to death." Yang Nanshi couldn't stand it anymore. With a roar, a huge old turtle as big as a mountain appeared. Han Fei screamed, "What? Did he just fly into a rage out of humiliation? Don't you know anything? You're used as a tool every day. It'd be strange if you could be successful. At least, the Chu sect knows what they want. And you only know how to find that path. You don't even know if that path exists, where it is, and what you will encounter after you go there. You just want to fight here? Hey, your turtle is so big. Don't you want to fuse with it? Mountain Divine Power. Yang Nanshi roared and angrily smashed down with the big copper hammer, and the 100-meter-long hammer shadow smashed out raging flames. Han Fei sneered. Sure enough, she's a silly girl who only knows how to use brute force. Suddenly, Han Fei felt something was wrong. Gravity? Han Fei suddenly discovered that gravity had changed. Within a kilometer? No, within a further distance, the gravity suddenly skyrocketed dozens of times. Domain power? Do you think you can stop me with this? As Han Fei spoke, the hunters of the Yi family suddenly split into dozens of shadows and attacked him from the sky. In addition, 2 rotating machetes flickered and danced in the air like moons. While resisting the attacks of the hunters and soul warriors, the spirit gatherer shouted, the spiritual energy fluctuations on his body are very fast. He is drawing an array. Han Fei bared his teeth. For some reason, he hated manipulators and spirit gatherers very much. In a battle, he could treat anyone as a retard, but he couldn't treat these 2 professions as retards. On the water surface, those seeds had begun to glow. The range covered by the seeds exceeded 5,000 meters and looked very much like some kind of domain power. Han Fei was indeed drawing an array. However, the method of this array was extremely strange. He was drawing it in his eyes, and all the spiritual energy condensed from his thoughts was gathered in his eyes. He was drawing a rather complicated large array, a large killing array. Dozens of times the gravity didn't affect Han Fei at all. With Han Fei's current strength, even if the gravity increased by 100 times, it would only reduce his speed by less than 20% at most, which was nothing to him. At this moment, where Han Fei was, there were mountains above, endless seeds below, and phantoms shuttled back and forth around him. As for the spirit gatherer, he could ignore them. What a bunch of fools. The million knife art suddenly disappeared, and the infinity water only turned into a drop. Han Fei's first priority was to stop the domain power of the manipulator at the bottom of the sea. At this time, the void lines wouldn't be of much use. Since the other party dared to stay, it meant that these people all had a way to stop the void lines. However, Han Fei didn't take back the void lines. At this moment, his void lines had already clasped the huge soil black tortoise. The infinity water quickly fell into the sea. Although the red flowers were blocking it, it was water after all, which could change at will. At this moment, it dispersed into mist and passed through the flowers. Almost at the same time as the infinity water fell into the sea, the seeds suddenly erupted with red laser-like rays, shooting straight into the void. This scene was very spectacular. Explode! Boom! Clank, clank, clank. The 13 clone phantoms of the Yi family hunter took action. However, Han Fei almost didn't move and only slightly trembled his body, avoiding most of the attacks. Of course, after being slashed a few times, the coiled turtle array was broken, and a few wounds appeared on Han Fei's body. It was not because of the strength of this hunter. It could really break Han Fei's defense, but because of the bone knife in his hand. The infinity water under him suddenly exploded. Above, with the recoil force, Han Fei had already launched the sacrificing punch. Dong, golden ripples visible to the naked eye shook in the void. At that moment, Han Fei's face changed slightly. What a strong force. He had underestimated Yang Nanshi's power. This silly lowly, with the help of a secret method, was almost on par with him in terms of pure strength. This meant that Yang Nanshi's strength as a peak-level hidden fisher had reached the intensity of 15 waves. Besides, with the pressure of the soil black tortoise, Han Fei's strength was slightly inferior. Not only was Yang Nanshi extremely powerful, but the void lines also failed again. When the first void line clasped the soil black tortoise, the giant tortoise directly sank into Yang Nanshi's body. An earthy yellow light appeared on the latter's body. You want to control my spiritual beast? In your dreams. Don't release your contractual spiritual beasts. Yang Nanshi didn't succeed, but the threat on the sea was greatly reduced. Within 2,000 meters, all the seeds were directly crushed by the infinity water. The laser-like thing failed to wrap him. Looking at the white mark on his neck, Han Fei snorted coldly, and the golden giant appeared, blocking the Yi family hunter with the will of the god of war. Chapter 1095. When he saw those tiny red beams of light that looked like lasers, Han Fei suddenly felt that he had an inspiration. Fuck, why didn't I think of this before? In the ideal palace, since there was infinite spiritual energy, why couldn't he create some special things? The infinity water returned again, protecting his body. Han Fei reached out and grabbed in the air, and a strange-looking weapon appeared in his hand. This was a world with infinite ideas. The other party could use laser-like combat skills, but he couldn't. What appeared in Han Fei's hand was a thermal weapon similar to a Gatling gun. Han Fei felt that this might be the first most incredible weapon he had created in this world so far. Clatter, clatter, clatter. Han Fei grabbed with both hands, and spiritual energy swarmed into the weapon. Countless specks of light shot out in all directions. Yang Nanshi rushed up with a sledgehammer and was hit by hundreds of bright spots. Yang Nanshi was stunned. Han Fei was also stunned. Looking at the thermal weapon in his hand, he was a little speechless. It doesn't seem to be very powerful. For a body-refining powerhouse, this spiritual energy explosion didn't seem to be able to hurt him at all. The weapon in Han Fei's hand turned into a compressed spiritual energy cannon. However, before Han Fei could compress much spiritual energy, he saw that a large number of seeds had covered the sea again. And those laser-like red lines were bent like noodles at this moment, covering the sky and stretching towards Han Fei. In the blink of an eye, no compressed cannon was of any use. His own fists were still the most useful. Han Fei and Yang Nanshi were hammering each other. In terms of strength alone, neither of them could defeat the other. Originally, Yang Nanshi was a violent girl who often used her strength as an absolute advantage to defeat her opponents. Therefore, she didn't bother to practice any combat skills in the past. But at this moment, Yang Nanshi was also speechless. Is this Han Fei the same as me? Is his bloodline special? However, Han Fei's mind at this moment wasn't on Yang Nanshi at all. The million knife art swept towards those red lines. However, to Han Fei's surprise, the water blades actually passed through those red lines and couldn't cut them at all. A voice rippled. Humph. I told you, you are preparing and so are we. Han Fei's heart sank. Do I have to use the supreme yin-yang image again? At that moment, with the embroidery needle in hand, Han Fei completely gave up on the opponent's hunter. The Monkey King's 3,000 staff strike struck towards Yang Nanshi with all his might. Shwa shwa shwa. Clang, 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 Han Fei flashed around Yang Nanshi crazily. The hunters of the Yi family flashed wildly around Han Fei. From the third person's perspective, a strange scene appeared here. Yang Nanshi was spinning in circles, Han Fei was everywhere, and Han Fei was surrounded by white marks. Explode! Since the infinity water couldn't cut off the red thread, Han Fei summoned it back. Relying on his strong physique, he detonated it right in front of him. Boom! For a moment, the three of them were sent flying. At this moment, they could clearly see that the hunter from the Yi family was coughing up large amounts of blood. Han Fei flew directly into those red threads. Blood oozed from the corner of Han Fei's mouth. I can even blow myself up when I'm determined. What can you do about it? As soon as he said that, he found that he was tied up by an extremely flexible silk. More importantly, these threads could not be severed. It was at this moment that Han Fei's array was ready. The 1,000 current divine arrow array, a very niche array, came from the Ocean Book. Usually, this was not an arrow array that could be set up by one person because it required a huge amount of spiritual energy. Generally speaking, it would take more than half an hour for a single person to set up the array, even if there was sufficient spiritual energy. However, this kind of killing array was usually set up temporarily on the battlefield. How could it be given half an hour? Therefore, it was often set up by hundreds of people at the same time. When the array was set up, It was like a full blow of 1,000 strong masters, which was extremely lethal. As long as the spiritual energy was abundant, the arrow array would not stop. Under normal circumstances, this kind of array was used in large-scale wars to help defend one side. After setting up the array, at least 100 spirit gatherers were needed to set up a spirit gathering array to cooperate with this array. However, all the difficulties were not difficult in the ideal palace. All Han Fei needed was time to draw the array. The difficulty of the array was actually not high. It was just that it was difficult to complete it with the power of one person. Once there was a mistake, he would have to start over. Han Fei had devoted all his energy to setting up the array just now. If it were old Jiang here, it might only take him a few seconds to set it up. However, Han Fei couldn't. He was still a step too late. At this moment, spiritual light flashed in Han Fei's eyes, and an extremely complicated array hovered in the air. Swish, swish, swish. Streams of light flashed out of the array and went straight to the 4 people on the field. However, at this moment, Han Fei was almost wrapped in red light like a dumpling. Under Han Fei's feet, a killing array also appeared. It was the spirit gatherer. The other party wasn't idle either. Clearly, the hunter and soul warrior that were being controlled weren't strong enough to stop him. The spirit gatherers set up the tidal sword array, and the sword shadows were trying to cut Han Fei. However, the sword array was not a bone sword. Thousands of sword shadows failed to cut Han Fei's body. Fuck, you're forcing me? Cancel the fusion, Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel. Han Fei knew the extraordinariness of the Supreme Yin-Yang Wheel. The reason why the 3 of them fused together before was that if he didn't fuse at that time, he might still be stabbed to death. But now, none of these 4 people were law enforcers. They couldn't kill him with one blow. Therefore, Han Fei didn't panic. Little Black and Little White could just use the Sun Yin-Yang Wheel. The Yin-Yang pattern appeared, swept around Han Fei, and all the red light was broken. Seeing this scene, the hunter who was rushing over was immediately enraged. What kind of power is this? The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up. Son of a bitch, you're really powerful. But isn't it my turn next? Han Fei stepped on the ground, and the Great Plate Turtle Array appeared. With a thought in his mind, the arrow light scattered, among which 300 arrow shadows shot straight at Yang Nanshi. Kill the manipulator. Han Fei grabbed the compressed spiritual energy cannon with one hand again. He had figured it out. Ordinary compressed spiritual energy was useless to throw at these people. Even if the infinity water exploded in front of them, it would be useless. After all, this was the infinity water he came up with, not the real infinity water. Since he was going to compress it, he had to create a spiritual energy explosion that even he felt was terrifying. Yang Nanshi saw something wrong. Han Fei was holding a strange box-like thing in his hand, and even Han Fei's arm was trembling slightly. Yang Nanshi shouted, Han Fei, in the ideal palace, no matter how hard you try, you won't be able to do anything. Go to hell. The giant hammer bombarded, and Han Fei's figure flashed out with a swish. All his strength was used to compress the spiritual energy cannon. At this moment, he was not in the mood to fight. At this moment, while only Yang Nanshi could block the 1,000 flowing divine arrow array, he only needed to avoid her. And now, the most dangerous one was the manipulator. She had never seen something like the supreme yin-yang pattern. Spiritual plants were ineffective against it, poisons were ineffective against it, domains were ineffective against it, and the light and shadow lines were ineffective against it. Anyway, no power was effective against the supreme yin-yang pattern. Once this weird pattern approached, she even felt an inexplicable suppression. The 1,000 flowing divine arrow array exploded. This was the manipulator's death substitution technique. However, just as she emerged from another place, a huge ball of spiritual energy appeared. Han Fei shouted, "Explode!" The manipulator reacted extremely quickly. She covered her body with spiritual plants and activated the death substitution technique. But suddenly she found that she couldn't move, and the supreme yin-yang pattern was already hovering above her head. At that moment she was startled. Taoist connotation? The woman was horrified. Impossible. Nanshi, help me. Young Nanshi was surprised. Is Moyu asking for help? How is it possible? Moyu was once a top heavenly talent ranked 5th among the top 10 heavenly talents. Very few people who fell into her light and shadow lines could escape, but now it was asking for help? When Yang Nanshi saw the supreme yin-yang pattern, she immediately gritted her teeth and was about to give up on Han Fei and smash it with her sledgehammer. Han Fei sneered. Do you think I can leave just like that? Won't I lose face? Swish, swish, swish. All the sword streams that besieged the spirit gatherer and the hunter blasted at Yang Nanshi. No matter how strong Yang Nanshi was as a peak-level hidden fisher, she had to deal with them. That was equivalent to the blow of thousands of hidden fishers. Shrouded by the supreme yin-yang pattern, Moyu even found that even her death substitution technique was broken, which was an absolute suppression. At the last moment, Moyu shouted, Taoist connotation. Moyu died. When she shouted this sentence, the three of them, including Yang Nanshi, were all horrified. Their first thought was, how is this possible? How strong is Han Fei? He hasn't even comprehended his own laws. How can he have the power of Taoist connotation? However, Moyu, once a top master ranked 5th among the top 10 heavenly talents, died in front of them. How could they not be shocked? Han Fei, who was out of danger, summoned the supreme yin-yang pattern and the two rushed at the spirit gatherer. Shit. Although the spirit gatherer was a heavenly talent, his array and combat power were not as good as Han Fei's. The reason why he stayed was that he had the guardian soul to enforce the law, and Yang Nanshi and the other two were there. However, Han Fei didn't say a word and directly rushed at him. The 1,000 arrows blocked the road, and the controlled hunters and soul warriors entangled him, so that he had no time to run away and was directly killed. Moyu could resist for a while, but he didn't even have the power to resist. The road was blocked, the sun yin-yang pattern came, and so did Han Fei. As a spirit gatherer and a semi-skilled soul warrior, he only tried to resist with an array, but he couldn't resist for even a second and was directly killed. The situation changed in the blink of an eye, and Han Fei directly gave up on the Yi family. It was not that he didn't want to kill them, but that he couldn't. Besides, the hunter had already run away. With a twist of his figure, he appeared directly a kilometer away and ran away quickly. At this time, Han Fei chased after Yang Nanshi with the 1,000 arrows shadow and the supreme yin-yang pattern. Yang Nanshi couldn't stay calm anymore. The Taoist connotation has come out. How can I fight? Yang Nanshi turned around and ran. Han Fei shouted behind Yang Nanshi, Hey, silly lowly, I won't kill you. We can cooperate. Chapter 1096. I won't listen, you can't kill me. While running, Yang Nanshi tried to hit Han Fei with the Overlord Hammer to block Han Fei's surprise attack. In fact, Yang Nanshi was really panicking. What was the concept of Tao? As far as she was concerned, only explorers and above were qualified to pursue the path of Tao. Why were those below explorers called law enforcers? Because powerhouses at this stage could only grasp a wisp of law at most, and it was impossible for them to touch the Great Way. However, when Moyu died, his terrified look didn't seem to be fake. This could only mean that Han Fei had some special opportunity to control a wisp of Tao in advance. Facing the law, Yang Nanshi was naturally not afraid. After all, no matter how strong a law was, it was just a wisp of power. However, Tao was a wisp of the Great Way. How could it be equated? Yang Nanshi didn't know that the supreme yin-yang image was actually not that strong. Chao Qiu could resist the yin-yang image, but how could he surpass Yang Nanshi's strength at this moment? Therefore, she could also resist it. However, Yang Nanshi didn't know the strength of the supreme yin-yang image, nor did she know that this kind of power actually couldn't last long. At least, when she was the only one left here, she didn't dare to fight. If she lost, she would lose her life. At least, the strength that Han Fei had shown so far was extremely strong. A total of 10 people came. Except for an armorist who went back to call for help, a hunter who ran away, and herself, all of them died, no one survived. Although Yang Nanshi had been clamoring for a fight with Han Fei before, however, in fact, It was just because she was not convinced. She believed that if it weren't for the fact that she hadn't passed the 6th soul realm, she wouldn't have been ranked 5th on the heavenly talent list. Yang Nanshi even thought that she could be tied with Jiang Nanyu for first place. However, this scene had truly horrified her. Fighting head-on with Han Fei, she didn't even dare to release her contractual spiritual beasts, for fear of being controlled. In terms of strength, Han Fei had indeed shown great strength. This was the first guy she had encountered in her life who could compete with her in strength at the same realm. Besides, although the 10 people who came this time were not all elites, Yang Nanshi believed that this force was more than enough to trap and kill 2 powerhouses on the heavenly talent list. However, when it came to Han Fei, they were almost wiped out in just half an hour. How could she not panic? The phantom glass wings were still faster than Yang Nanshi. Han Fei soon reached Yang Nanshi and deactivated the supreme yin-yang wheel. Han Fei said, "Yang Nanshi, I'm telling you the truth. No one from your family died in my hands. Why must I kill you? Everything I've said before is true. Even if your aristocratic families could kill me, your young family wouldn't be able to get a share. However, I can give you a share of the profits." Yang Nanshi swung her sledgehammer at Han Fei, only to be smashed by Han Fei with 3 punches. The two stood 1,000 meters apart. Yang Nanshi said, "Don't think that I'll believe you just because you took that black and white pattern. Stay 5,000 meters away from me before you talk." The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. It's possible. The Yang family's IQ is really low. Han Fei shrugged. As you wish. Actually, if I really wanted to kill you, I could just directly chase after you. Do you really think you can run away? Yang Nanshi snorted arrogantly. You can't kill me. Do you think I'm that lunatic Chu Kuangren? Although your black and white pattern is very powerful, if I don't care about the consequences and go all out, I can at least save my life. Han Fei retreated a little, spread his hands, and said, I won't do it. Let's talk. Yang Nanshi looked vigilant. On the one hand, she wanted to hear what Han Fei was going to say. On the other hand, she was waiting for someone. And Han Fei's purpose was actually very simple. Once he left the Ideal Palace, they would definitely still be enemies. However, in the Ideal Palace, if he could persuade the Yang family not to take action, or even develop them into unstable members, it would actually be of great benefit. Han Fei said, I know you are waiting for reinforcements. But it doesn't matter. I'll only say what I'm going to say next once. It's up to you whether you want to listen or not. I've analyzed it for you before. Even if all the star beads of the Thug Academy are handed over, your Yang family won't be able to get them. Yang Nanshi raised the sledgehammer. Why are you so sure? Han Fei sneered. The big families in the 1,000-star city may all know the purpose of snatching star beads, which is to go to that place. Do you know where it is? Yang Nanshi replied, I don't know, but I know that there's a mysterious place outside the 1,000-star city. Once you pass, you will be blessed with countless blessings. Han Fei scoffed. Bullshit. If you really knew what was going on over there, would the big families fight with me for the sea-quelling painting? Look at the Chu sect. Has anyone ever tried to snatch the sea-quelling painting? Yang Nanshi, so much nonsense, what do you want to say? Han Fei sneered. I want to tell you, whether it's the big families or the 7 major sects, in the end only one family, no, to be precise, only one person could obtain the opportunity in that place. His goal is to become a king. Yang Nanshi's pupils shrank. You know the inside story? Han Fei said in disdain, do I need to know the inside story? If not to become a king, what do you think the aristocratic families do? Moreover, becoming a king was something that only Exalt Realm experts could accomplish. Does your Yang family have a venerable? Let me assume that your Yang family has a venerable level powerhouse hidden very deeply. But are they as strong as the Chu sect? They know that the opportunity is not in the sea-quelling painting, so they have been exploring the 1,000-star proving ground. They have been preparing for this for thousands of years or even tens of thousands of years. How can a group of people who don't know anything compete with them? Yang Nanshi said in disbelief, my family leader can't be a fool. I don't know, but they definitely know. Han Fei sneered. I believe others. Your young family, do you think you're smart? You're just a bunch of guys with more brawn than brains. How can you compare with a family that has existed for thousands of years? However, if you listen to me, your young family may not be able to become kings, but at least your young family may not be destroyed. Young Nanshi tilted her head and looked at Han Fei. Don't fool me. I'm very smart. Han Fei thought to himself, those who can say this are definitely not smart. How can you be smart? Han Fei grinned and said, of course I appreciate your intelligence. Otherwise, I would have told someone else long ago. It's just that they are too stupid, even more stupid than you. Seeing that young Nanshi's face softened a little, Han Fei couldn't help but laugh in his heart and continued to bluff. Think about it. What if your elders are also kept in the dark? What if the Chu sect succeeds and a venerable of the Chu sect becomes a king? Do you know what will happen to the Yang family? Young Nanshi's pupils constricted. Go on. Han Fei said, let me ask you a question first. Think about it, if someone in your family becomes a king. But the other big families all have venerables who have the chance to become kings. What will you do? Young Nanshi said fiercely, beat him up. Han Fei smiled and said, yes, that's the truth. Look, among the top 10 heavenly talents, if not including me, I think you can rank first. What do you think? Yang Nanshi said proudly, of course. If it weren't for the 6th soul realm, I would definitely rank first. I have an ancient bloodline, so of course I won't lose to anyone. Han Fei sneered in his heart. Is this Yang family the descendants of that giant? From top to bottom, their brains don't seem to be very developed. Han Fei immediately said, think about it. You are so talented that you must have the potential to become a king. Once the Chu sect succeeds, someone will really become a king. For a heavenly talent like you who has the potential to become a king, do you think you will be punished? Yang Nanshi choked and seemed to think for a long time. Let me tell you, we are still enemies. Don't fool me. Han Fei laughed. Of course. Of course we are enemies, and I also have the potential to become a king. In the future, there will definitely be a battle between you and me. But, Yang Nanshi, you have to think about it. Don't be used by others without knowing it. If there is really a chance to become a king, no one will give it to the Yang family, not even me. So, not only am I your enemy, but all the big families who came here today are your enemies. You are just temporarily joining forces to kill me, an enemy who has the potential to become a king. If I die, won't you be the next one to be killed? Yang Nanshi trembled all over. Han Fei's eyes lit up. That's all I have to say. At this moment, someone will definitely come to help. I have to go. Yang Nanshi, there is a reason why no one in the Thousand-Star City has been able to become a king for 10,000 years. The big families always set their eyes on those who have the potential to become a king. I have the potential, so they all come to kill me. Do you think they will let you go for the sake of the Yang family? With that, Han Fei flew away with a swish. For Han Fei, Yang Nanshi was really impossible to be killed. Even with the supreme yin-yang wheel and his powerful array, he could at most seriously injure her. After all, these were all imaginary, and the power shown just now was indeed much weaker. Perhaps the enemy's reinforcements would arrive while they were fighting. Instead of that, he might as well let her go and fool her. Anyway, the people of the Yang family were relatively stupid and easy to fool. He really couldn't fool her. If the other party didn't listen to him, he didn't need such an opponent. But once he succeeded and planted a seed in the other party's heart, would the other party really work hard again? Han Fei released his perception and rushed all the way in the direction of the so-called giant city. Half an hour later, a large group of nearly 50 people were rushing across the surface of the sea. Coincidentally, they bumped into Yang Nanshi, who was returning. The leader was none other than Chu Qingyan. The hunter of the Yi family who had just escaped was also among them. Seeing Yang Nanshi alone, Chu Qingyan's face immediately sank. Nanshi, where is Han Fei? Yang Nanshi glanced at Chu Qingyan strangely and said, he ran away. Chu Qingyan's face turned ugly. Where did he go? Yang Nanshi shrugged. How would I know? You guys are too slow. And Yi Kai, you ran so fast. Didn't you take me with you? Immediately, 5 or 6 people surrounded Yang Nanshi. Miss, are you okay? Yang Nanshi snorted and waved her hand. I almost died. Let's go back to the city. Chapter 1097. Han Fei could avoid these people. With the range of his senses, it wasn't difficult for him to discover others in advance and avoid danger. Along the way, in addition to finding Chu Qingyan and the others passing by with a group of people, Han Fei found at least 3 more groups of people passing by. However, those people were all rushing to various places, and the other party was in a hurry as if they were doing some mission just like him. Han Fei didn't look for trouble. If they didn't come to find him, he didn't need to take the initiative to find trouble. About half an hour later, Han Fei found that the number of creatures in the sea had increased. Just like the periphery of the scattered stars island, there were battles between humans and marine creatures. However, the level of these battles was not very high, and most of them were hanging fishers. Although the fighting was very intense, such a war was actually a kind of training for the soldiers. The strong would only watch from the sidelines to prevent accidents and generally wouldn't take action. With a thought, Han Fei had turned into a stranger's appearance. However, when Han Fei landed, he scanned with his perception and found that several people were staring at him. And in Han Fei's perception, at least a dozen people disappeared into the crowd. About 50 kilometers away, Han Fei saw the shadow of a giant city. Han Fei thought to himself, this is much better than when I saw the heavenly desolate city. When he was in the heavenly desolate city, it was really miserable. In the end, even dangling fishers joined the battle. The hanging fishers were not weak. It could be seen that all the strong people died in the war, because the strength of Han Fei's soul had reached a very high level. At this moment, it was very easy for him to see 100 kilometers away. Therefore, Han Fei saw the 4 big words, City of Justice, written on the city wall from a long distance. Han Fei murmured, City of Justice? I've never heard of it. This name is too weird. Even if you are really the embodiment of justice, you don't have to give it such a name, do you? Besides, can you guarantee that the people in the city are all fucking good people and none of them do evil? That's not realistic. However, this is not the point. Let's go in first. Han Fei knew that he had the breath of a living person on him, so he would definitely be discovered as soon as he came. If the aristocratic families had already sealed off the 5th soul realm, and he was a new face, he would naturally be discovered. Not only would he be discovered, but so would Luo Xiaobai and the others. Now, he only encountered Yang Nanshi and a few others. He didn't know if Luo Xiaobai and the others had gathered together. Han Fei's appearance attracted many people's attention. However, these people were all ordinary hidden fishers, and only one of them had reached the peak level. Because they didn't know Han Fei, they just bowed and didn't talk to each other. Below the city, Han Fei crossed the city gate and was not stopped. In fact, there was no one guarding the door. Perhaps, this city had really reached the level of not picking up any loose ends on the road and had become the embodiment of justice? However, it was true that in a world of cultivators, whether or not there were guards was the same. After all, cultivators could sense with a thought. Why would they need guards? Also, this place was too close to the coastline. It was so close that once something big happened, someone would notice it immediately. The City of Justice was also divided into an outer city and an inner city. Wasn't it similar to the Tianhuang city back then? However, at this moment, a large expanse of empty land was exposed in the outer city. Many people were cultivating and sharpening their combat skills. Clang, clang, clang. Fight as hard as you can. You have to carve the fighting spirit into your bones. Han Fei saw that not far away, there was a group of teenagers who were peak-level dangling fishers fighting. That was a real battle. They fought until they were drenched in blood and their skin was torn open. On another training ground, 2 perfect combinations were fighting against each other. Knives and swords flashed, shields and vines rolled, and they were fighting fiercely. And between them, a hanging fisher with 7 or 8 scars on his face was watching the battle. From time to time, he would yell harshly. At the edge of the training ground, There were spirit gatherers guarding. Obviously, after the battle, they would heal these teenagers. Han Fei couldn't help but feel a little touched. If there were only 1 or 2 places like this, it wouldn't be a big deal. But within his range of perception, there were as many as 100 such training battlefields. Because the nearest training ground was too close to Han Fei. Therefore, when the hanging fisher drill master saw Han Fei, his eyes lit up. Because under normal circumstances, there were not many strong masters passing through the outer city. Everyone was very busy, and the strong masters in the city always had a lot of things to do, so they usually flew directly from the sky. In this time of war, efficiency was above everything else. Therefore, when this person saw Han Fei, he hurriedly ran over. "Sir, can you come with me?" Han Fei paused for a moment. "What's the matter?" The man said with an ugly face, "Sir, I have a few children who have reached a bottleneck. I wonder if you can exert some pressure on them? Can you help them once? I don't dare to waste too much of your time. I'll be fine in a moment." Han Fei thought, so that's why. He immediately smiled and said, "Of course, these are the pillars of our human race." Seeing Han Fei coming, the drill master immediately said to the spirit gatherer, "Everyone, stop fighting and heal your wounds quickly." Not far away, the spirit gatherer was about to stop, but he heard Han Fei say, "No, I'll do it." Han Fei knew that a peak-level hanging fisher had limited spiritual energy. And he had unlimited spiritual energy, so his healing speed was much faster. Just when the Scarface drill master was puzzled, he saw Han Fei waved his hand and a series of divine healing techniques fell on them. In the shocked eyes of the spirit gatherer, he saw that the children covered with wounds were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. 1 second. 2 seconds. 3 seconds. Because they were not seriously injured, the injuries of these teenagers were all healed within 3 seconds. This efficiency was simply amazing. The Scarface drill master was stunned. "Law enforcer?" Han Fei didn't explain but just smiled. "Everyone come over, within 100 meters of me." The group of teenagers was already stunned. They had seen law enforcers before, and they could even see them often. The outer city was only separated from the outside world by a wall, and they were often pulled out to watch the battle. However, they had rarely seen such a powerful and fast healing technique. Therefore, this didn't prevent these teenagers from looking at Han Fei admiringly. Han Fei sighed slightly in his heart. Anyway, it wouldn't take long, so it was good to give them some hope. When those teenagers gathered, Han Fei's face turned slightly cold. Suddenly, within a radius of 100 meters, everyone trembled. It was a strong killing intent, full of the smell of blood. Even the Scarface drill master next to Han Fei was trembling. How many creatures did he kill to cultivate such a terrifying killing intent? Even the drill master was shocked, not to mention those teenagers. Almost half of the teenagers stepped back, not even daring to look at Han Fei. Han Fei shouted, "Don't step back." That feeling was like a small boat floating on a turbulent sea. If they were not careful, they would be knocked over by the waves. Many of these teenagers at this moment had blood dripping from the corners of their mouths. They were bracing themselves to resist this strong killing intent. Han Fei said solemnly, "You will eventually go to the battlefield and fight the enemy bravely. The battlefield is filled with man-eating behemoths. Your companions are dying and your homes are being destroyed. You have no choice. The road is in front of you, so you have to kill. You have to use the knives in your hands to kill your way out of this world. You carry hope." At this moment, many people looked over from all directions. It would be a pity not to see this magnificent scene of a breakthrough. Many people heard what Han Fei said, and they clenched their fists. They bore the weight of hope. Just a single sentence from him was enough to stir their hearts. Under the pressure and the stimulation of the words, a teenager's eyes turned red. Gotcha! The barrier had been broken, and a new hanging fisher was born. Successively, in just over 10 minutes, 5 people successfully broke the barrier. Han Fei felt the strength of the remaining people and withdrew his killing intent. In an instant, all the teenagers fell to the ground. Han Fei looked at the scar-faced drill master who was already sweating profusely beside him and said, "Those who should have broken through, but the rest are still a little bit behind." The scar-faced drill master said solemnly, "Thank you, Lord Law Enforcer. You are right. The road is in front of us, so we have to kill. I hope you will follow City Lord Shiman and use the Avenger as your partner to kill your way out of this world." City Lord Shiman? The Avenger? Han Fei nodded slightly, suddenly pointed to the high city wall, and said in a low voice, "I want to ask you, why is this city called the City of Justice?" Everyone was taken aback by this question. Is there a need to ask? However, the scar-faced drill master reacted quickly. This must be a lesson that the law enforcer wanted to teach everyone. The scar-faced drill master shouted sternly, "Are you all mute? My lord is asking a question." Many people also pricked up their ears to listen. Is there a need to ask a question? Is there any deeper meaning? A teenager who had just broken through quickly got up and said respectfully, "My lord." The name of the City of Justice was written by City Lord Shiman Linghan himself. The City Lord of the West City was once wronged and set out to sea, determined to take revenge, sailed the Avenger, and crossed the sea. After thousands of hardships, he became a venerable. He upholds the righteousness of the human world, slaughters all the injustices in the world, selflessly contributes all kinds of cultivation methods and combat skills, so that thousands of human beings can rise. As a human being, we should have a heart of justice. Han Fei's eyelids twitched slightly. Good heavens, a venerable level powerhouse. That's a bit awesome. Listening to this, the name of this city did make sense. In fact, after hearing the information he wanted to hear, Han Fei immediately said leisurely, "This is your understanding of justice, which is too narrow. Let me tell you what is justice. In the outside world, the Sea Clan invaded and wanted to destroy the human race. However, the heavenly Tao is heartless and treats all things as fish. The great chaos is coming, and the end of the world has come. If the heavenly Tao wants the human race to be destroyed, the human race will rise against the heavenly Tao, let alone the Sea Clan. As long as people live, the continuation of the race and the longevity of tens of thousands of years is the justice between heaven and earth. If it is not our race, no matter what it is, we will have an unyielding heart and never bow our heads. There is nothing in the world that can destroy the human race. Even heaven and earth can't, let alone the Sea Clan? Do you understand my righteousness?" Hearing Han Fei's words, the people within dozens of kilometers fell silent. Someone's heart trembled. What kind of mentality is this? Someone murmured, "There is nothing that can destroy the human race, not even heaven and earth." Someone's heart was burning. This is the unparalleled mentality, this is the pride of a strong master. Someone growled, "The human race will not be destroyed." The human race will not be destroyed. Han Fei turned around and roared to the inner city. He seemed to be moving slowly, but he was actually moving fast. Countless youths looked at that back view and felt incomparably lonely. They knew that there were often strong masters dying. They must be carrying more things on their shoulders. Someone burst into tears and roared, "What are you waiting for?" Second update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1098. Phew. Han Fei breathed a sigh of relief. Bragging seriously really required a lot of acting skills. Of course, he wasn't bragging. He was telling the truth. Although the City of Justice would inevitably perish in the sea, people couldn't lose hope. Countless people in this world lived on a glimmer of hope. Without this hope, living was tantamount to dying. In fact, Han Fei had some expectations in his heart. He didn't want this city to be sealed by an inexplicable force like the heavenly desolate city. Perhaps this city would be destroyed. Perhaps most of these young people would die in the battle. However, maybe one or two of them would be able to escape alive. In any case, the longer he stayed in this illusion, the more Han Fei felt that this was not just an illusion. Every grass, every tree, and every person here seemed to have existed before. Now, they could be reborn in the illusion, which might be caused by a monstrous force. It might not be a coincidence that these people could live forever in the illusion. At least, someone wanted to remember them and these deceased heroes. At this moment, Han Fei didn't know that in the depths of the City of Justice, someone was standing on the clouds with a knife in his hand, watching this scene quietly. The man murmured, "Nothing can destroy the human race, not even heaven and earth. Son of a bitch, my consciousness is even lower than that of a young boy. Alas, I've really lived in a fish's stomach." With a thought, the man's voice came down, "This boy is not bad. He has a high consciousness and has the potential to become a king. Take him to my Avenger. I'm going to train him myself." Of course, Han Fei didn't know what would happen to him if he bragged. He just wanted to ask, why is the City of Justice called the City of Justice? What does this name mean? That was all. Because Han Fei was strong enough, as long as he was a human, he could easily enter the inner city. Because his perception range was very large, Han Fei scanned and found the statue of Sea God more than 400 kilometers away. To be precise, Han Fei felt that this statue of Sea God looked very familiar. Was it the statue of his mother? Yes, it was. Otherwise, why did it look familiar? Especially after seeing his mother's projection. Anyway, she could be seen everywhere. This meant that his mother was much stronger than Old Han. Tiskadiste, Old Han, how on earth did you manage to woo such a strong mother like me? This doesn't make sense. Han Fei did not stop. There were a lot of people in the city, regardless of whether it was the end of days or some other era. Be it a powerhouse or an ordinary person, they would all pursue one thing called life. Of course, powerful experts would always pursue their own path. Some people simply wanted to become stronger, while others wanted to become kings. For different people, the goal was different in stages. And at different stages, the meaning of pursuit was also different. The city was not bustling with noise. There were many shops selling goods, but the smell of fish filled his nose and mouth. All kinds of fish bones, deep-sea refined iron, shells, spirit fruits, and so on were for sale. But the scene that Han Fei saw was slightly different from that in the Heavenly Desolate City. The people of Heavenly Desolation City had been fighting for so long that they were used to living in that state. Therefore, the road was full of people, noisy, and there were all kinds of things being sold. However, in the City of Justice, Han Fei could still perceive that countless people were cultivating at home. Han Fei looked up at the sky and found that there was spiritual energy rolling like a tide. However, at an extremely high altitude, it was sucked in all directions. There are many large spirit gathering arrays in the city. It seems that Shimin Linghan has done a lot of homework for the sake of national cultivation. Of course, Han Fei saw people flying in the sky from time to time. They were all hidden fishers. Occasionally, some law enforcers passed by, but they didn't care about him. Han Fei didn't stop. In his perception, he found that Luo Xiaobai and Zhang Xuanyu were there. None of the others were there. This at least showed that they were indeed teleported to different places. Just like himself, he had directly appeared in someone else's team and somehow managed to escape alive. In front of the sea god's temple, many people were worshipping and praying. The form of prayer was very simple. They just raised one hand and closed their eyes, thinking about something. Not far from the side, there was a large garden. Luo Xiaobai and Zhang Xuanyu were sitting by the flower pond at the moment. Zhang Xuanyu asked, "Aren't they in the city? Why haven't they appeared yet?" Luo Xiaobai thought, "This is a matter of probability. It's possible that they have appeared in the outer sea. However, we can't look for them, nor can we find them at all. We can only wait." Zhang Xuanyu asked, "See? We have been targeted by many people. Dozens of them were looking at him. I'm afraid that as long as we go out, a war will break out." Luo Xiaobai nodded slightly. "It's natural to be discovered. It's very likely that they don't appear in many random places, so I can appear with you." Suddenly, Luo Xiaobai's eyes lit up. Han Fei is here. Zhang Xuanyu scanned with his perception and found Han Fei. He immediately asked via voice transmission, "Where have you been?" Han Fei flew over. Because everyone was flying, no one in this City of Justice would care. Usually, people would only think that you were busy. It only took a while to cover a distance of 100 kilometers. Han Fei quickly flew over and said lightly, "Where are the others?" Luo Xiaobai shook her head. "I don't know. Zhang Xuanyu and I appeared here directly. We don't need to look for the sea god statue at all." Han Fei said, "They may have been delayed by some mission." Luo Xiaobai wondered, "What mission?" Han Fei immediately told her what he had seen and heard. In order to prevent others from eavesdropping, Han Fei specially set up a soundproof array. Zhang Xuanyu was stunned. "What? You said you have experienced 2 wars?" Han Fei nodded. "Yes, Xiaobai, what can you analyze?" Luo Xiaobai thought for a while. "The teleportation points are not fixed, but there definitely won't be many. According to what you said, you appeared directly in a mission. That may mean that we appeared according to the historical process of this city or historical events." Han Fei thought for a while and nodded. "But if this is the case, why can many people escape from events? For example, I have now sensed more than 60 living auras." Zhang Xuanyu sneered. "It's okay. These people can only watch now. I thought there would be a war as soon as I came in. Who knew it was in the city? But look, now in this city of justice, everyone is united to protect the city, save the people, and defend the foundation of the human race. If they dare to make a move in such a situation, we don't even need to do anything ourselves. I'm afraid that everyone in this city will immediately tear them apart." Han Fei bared his teeth. "Are you so optimistic?" Luo Xiaobai shook her head. "The big families are not fools. There are many people who have passed the 5th soul realm. If they can't attack here, why would they choose this place? Besides, the 5th soul realm is also known as the War Soul realm. However, except for the encounter battle that Han Fei just mentioned, we haven't seen a war yet." Luo Xiaobai paused and continued, "And there is another question. As outsiders, or rather living beings, is it really an accident that we appeared here? You appeared in the outer sea and directly participated in the war. Our appearance here, does it mean that something is about to happen here?" Han Fei nodded quickly. Before he finished nodding, he saw several figures suddenly appear in the sky. Han Fei's face changed slightly. Explorers? He couldn't be wrong about this. If the other party was a law enforcer, Han Fei could tell from his aura. The aura coming from the newcomer was definitely that of an explorer. The newcomer was a middle-aged man with a dignified face and a gray robe. The man shouted, "All hidden fishers in the city, gather under the statue of the sea god. Return in half an hour. The whole city." The middle-aged man said 3 times in a row, and his voice spread across the whole city. Han Fei and Zhang Xuanyu couldn't help looking at Luo Xiaobai. What's wrong with her? Something happened when she said something happened. Lu Renquang and the others haven't arrived yet. But something happened. Luo Xiaobai's face darkened. Great, if Lu Renquang and the others are in the city, they will definitely come. If they don't come, they are obviously not in the city. In addition, all the people from the big families will definitely gather. However, since something big has happened with the current situation of the City of Justice, they can't directly attack us in a large-scale war. Han Fei grinned. "I'm afraid that Lu Renquang and the others are in the outer sea. It's very easy to be sniped there." Han Fei couldn't help but remember that on the way, he actually found Chu Qingyan and the others. However, he avoided them. It was obviously unwise for one person to fight with so many people. If it were just more than 50 peak-level hidden fishers, or even more than 50 ordinary heavenly talents, he wouldn't be afraid. However, this time there were many law enforcers. Among these people, there might be a top heavenly talent like Mou. If 2 more heavenly talents of that level came, Han Fei felt that he would be in a panic. After all, they had been law enforcers for a long time and had experience. Of course, those who could enter the top 10 heavenly talents must have their own strengths. Just like Mou, although he used to be one of the top 10 heavenly talents, he was almost tied up by Han Fei. If he didn't have the supreme yin-yang wheel, he might have been pressed into the sea by Yang Nanshi and bombarded at this moment. While Han Fei and the others were thinking, their eyes suddenly blurred. The middle-aged man who spoke just now appeared directly in front of the 3 of them. The three of them felt a chill down their backs. What's the meaning of this? What's the matter? Why did the explorer come to us? The middle-aged man looked Han Fei up and down thoughtfully. Han Fei felt his scalp go numb. Could it be that his identity as an outsider had been discovered? Before Han Fei's imagination ran wild, he heard the middle-aged man say, "You are a body cultivator. Not bad. The city lord said that you are qualified to board the Avenger. The city lord can train you personally." But Han Fei was stunned. What the hell? Is he talking about Shimin Linhan? Han Fei swallowed. I haven't even seen Shimin Linhan. Why is he looking for me? Han Fei's face stiffened and he pointed at himself. The city lord wants to train me personally? The middle-aged man stretched out his hand and patted Han Fei on the shoulder. You have to believe in the city lord's vision. You know, this is a great honor. This means that the city lord has taken a fancy to your potential. If you board the Avenger, your future achievements will be limitless. Han Fei glanced at Zhang Xuanyu and Luo Xiaobai, only to find that the two were also looking at him. He was puzzled and thought to himself, didn't you say that you just had 2 fights in the outer sea? How could you have anything to do with the city lord of the City of Justice? Han Fei took a deep breath. May I ask why? Chapter 1099. Han Fei really didn't understand. I haven't even seen the city master. Why does he value me so much? And he wants to train me personally? Is it possible that I'm really the chosen one? I'm so lucky that even the venerables like to have a relationship with me. The middle-aged man said, what you just said in the outer city was very good. TSK, there's nothing that can destroy the human race, not even heaven and earth. These words are very impressive. You're a proud and unyielding heavenly talent. When Han Fei heard this, he was stunned. What the hell is this city master doing? There are so many people in this big city. Is it interesting to eavesdrop on me? Han Fei had thought that he was very lucky. So it turned out that he was bragging and the city master heard him? Luo Xiaobai and Zhang Xuanyu looked at Han Fei speechlessly. What did you do in the outer city again? How did it reach the ears of the city master? Besides, as the two people who knew Han Fei very well, Luo Xiaobai and Zhang Xuanyu knew that Han Fei was bragging. Human race? Han Fei had never said a word for the human race since he was a child. Now, such a sentence popped out of nowhere. If he wasn't bragging, the two of them would have taken off his head and kicked it like a ball. But now that things had come to this, what if Han Fei was really taken away? Han Fei's eyes dimmed and his expression was slightly solemn. Senior, please forgive me for not being able to do that. Why? The middle-aged man looked at Han Fei in astonishment. Is this kid crazy? Does he know what he is doing? This was a benefit that countless people yearned for but couldn't get. Personally visiting the Avenger, was there a bigger pie in the world than this? However, Han Fei refused. Not to mention the middle-aged man, even Shimin Linghan, who had been smiling in the sky, suddenly stiffened and was dumbfounded. Has this kid's head been clamped by a big lobster? Han Fei took a deep breath and said with a serious face, Senior, I admit that I'm very tempted. However, everyone is responsible for the rise and fall of a city. In the outer sea, the Sea Clan rolled in with the momentum of destroying the city. Near the coast, from dangling fishers to great fishing masters, they fought desperately, not afraid of death. He raised the power of the city and risked his life to protect the city, disregarding life and death. How can I, Han Fei, live an ignoble existence and board the Avenger? The middle-aged man was dumbfounded. That seemed to be the case. Why does it sound different now that you mention it? Had it reached the point where the entire city was going to die? The middle-aged man said, Han Fei, right? On the Avenger, you can actually fight. Han Fei shook his head. The city master is a venerable. It's not easy for me to die. What's so important that a peak-level hidden fisher like me has to participate in the battle? I am comforted that the city lord has a heart that appreciates talent. However, everyone in the City of Justice is now my brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, nephews and nieces. How can I abandon them? Although the war is difficult, There are thousands of difficulties and tens of thousands of obstacles. The mountains and seas collide, but they cannot stop my feet. They cannot stop my fearless heart. That's why I can't board the Avengers. That would haunt me for the rest of my life. I, Han Fei, belong to the City of Justice. We don't seek to live together, but to die together, and we won't regret it even if we die 9 times. Luo Xiaobai and Zhang Xuanyu almost couldn't stand it anymore. What Zhang Xuanyu had always admired was that Han Fei always came up with new words and subverted his cognition. The corners of Luo Xiaobai's mouth almost couldn't help twitching. If she didn't know Han Fei, she might really be moved. How could there be such a strange man in this world? However, she knew Han Fei too well. She could guarantee with her dignity that, despite Han Fei's impassioned speech, every word that came out of Han Fei's mouth contained a serious element of bragging. However, the middle-aged explorer didn't know that. He looked solemn and looked at Han Fei in a different way. He didn't expect that there was such a person in the City of Justice. No wonder the City Lord took a fancy to him at first glance. No wonder even the City Lord wanted to personally cultivate this person. The middle-aged man sighed. This person really has something extraordinary. If it weren't for the fierce war, as long as this man didn't die, he would definitely be a big shot in the future. Even Shimin Linghan in the sky was moved when he heard Han Fei's words. Son of a bitch, I was almost tempted. Why is this guy only a peak-level hidden fisher? If he becomes a venerable, he must be a good man who is affectionate and righteous. Maybe. Shimin Linghan sighed faintly and said via voice transmission, let him be. This is his own choice. I respect his choice. Hearing this, the middle-aged man also sighed faintly, stretched out his hand, and patted Han Fei on the shoulder. You have to work hard to survive. The City of Justice still needs people like you to protect it. Han Fei said solemnly, Han Fei will spare no effort. At this point, the Venerable One was willing, but Han Fei was not. What else could he do? The middle-aged man could only sigh in his heart. These people are really the future hope of the City of Justice. I hope they don't die. He didn't notice Luo Xiaobai and Zhang Xuanyu but returned to the sea god statue and waited quietly. Anyone below the hidden fisher level, retreat. Around them, the huge square was full of people in all directions, forming a large circle. All the hidden fishers in the city were summoned. Something big must have happened. Since the 3 of them were peak-level hidden fishers, they were no exception. They stood in front of the sea god statue. Then, from all directions of the City of Justice, one figure after another cut through the sky and landed one after another. Those outsiders from the big clans naturally didn't dare to run. Run in front of the explorers? That was almost impossible. Because they were all peak-level hidden fishers, they were in the same row as Han Fei and the others. There was no surprise on the faces of these people. They didn't seem to be worried or anxious at all. They were very calm. The 3 of them looked at each other and frowned slightly. This was not a good sign. This 5th soul realm seemed to be an infinite war. If the City of Justice was destroyed, it might be the beginning of this story. This was the first time they had come to the Ideal Palace. They didn't know how the story would develop here. However, these big clans had occupied the Thousand-Star City for so long that it was very likely that they had long known the historical development of the City of Justice, and some of their clansmen had been staying in the Ideal Palace. From this point of view, they were in a very passive position. More and more people came from all directions. In just half an hour, the number of hidden fishers exceeded 1,000. Among them, as many as 120 people had the aura of living beings. Han Fei's face sank slightly. It seems that the big clans are going all out this time. These people were not small fries. There were not many people who could enter the 5th soul realm and dared to enter the 5th soul realm. There were more than 100 of them. This meant that these more than 100 people were all the elites of the elites. In the eyes of outsiders, they were definitely heavenly talents. Zhang Xuanyu swallowed and said, Kuang Kuang and Li Kuang didn't come. Luo Xiaobai's face darkened slightly. They must be in trouble. Don't panic. Let's play it by ear. About half an hour later, 5th Glimmer came and Chao Qiu arrived. But Luo Jiutian, Chao Jiaran, and Chao Tian didn't appear. The time it took for an incense stick to burn was almost up. Han Fei secretly breathed a sigh of relief, looked at Fifth Glimmer, and thought to himself, it's good that Chu Qingyan and Yang Nanshi didn't come back in time. But at the last moment, Han Fei's face suddenly changed. In his perception, Chu Qingyan and the others had returned. Damn, they're back so soon? The middle-aged explorer was about to speak, but he also seemed to notice that someone was returning, so he couldn't help shouting at the void, "Hurry up!" Zhang Xuanyu said leisurely, "Almost 200 people." Han Fei rolled his eyes, thinking, do I need you to tell me? Can't I see? On his side, even including Diwu Glimmer and Chao Qiu, there were only 5 people. Among these 5 people, Chao Qiu was included. He probably didn't know anything about this War Soul realm. Diwu Glimmer said, "Don't panic." Han Fei responded, "Don't panic." Soon, Chu Qingyan and the others arrived. They were all peak-level hidden fishers, which made the middle-aged explorer look much better. After Chu Qingyan and the others returned, the middle-aged man said lightly, "Speed is the most important thing in war. Let's make a long story short. A few days ago, the city lord found a strange stone mountain in the outer sea, which may be able to solve the crisis of the human race and save the people. We've gathered all of you to take a gamble. At this moment, there are as many as 32 battlefields in the outer sea, involving a large number of sea creatures. This is our opportunity. The Avenger will lead us to fight in person. At that time, it's time for you to contribute." The middle-aged man spoke for a long time, and in the end, his tone was cold. This battle is a great event that will determine the immortal foundation of our human race. At this moment, it's a battle of life and death. Everyone, do you have confidence? As he spoke, the middle-aged man's blood soared into the sky, and his murderous aura rolled over, making everyone's blood boil. Someone roared, his veins bulging. "Fight!" Someone roared, "This battle must be won. The human race must not be destroyed." However, in the ears of Han Fei and the others, the meaning changed. The Venerable personally led the crowd to fight for a mountain. Needless to say, it must be the floating stone. However, in fact, the City of Justice had already fallen. Therefore, this battle was extremely dangerous. It was very likely that the City of Justice was defeated because of this battle. Therefore, the key time for the big clans to take action was in this battle. Luo Xiaobai took a breath and said, "It doesn't matter whether the others are here or not. This time, you must ensure your own safety no matter what." Han Fei nodded solemnly. Indeed, as long as he died, the purpose of the big clans would almost be achieved. Han Fei glanced at Yang Nanshi. The latter stole a glance at Han Fei, and other than that, there was no other interaction. Chapter 1100. Nearly 3,000 people joined the battle. Among them, as many as 800 peak-level hidden fishers joined the battle. This power could not be said to be weak. Not to mention that there were 32 battlefields in the outer sea. How many hidden fishers and law enforcers were involved? In terms of strength and heritage, the City of Justice seemed to be much stronger than the heavenly desolate city that he had experienced. Of course, this was also related to the timing of Han Fei's trip to the heavenly desolate city. After all, in the space-time that Han Fei went to, the heavenly desolate city had been fighting for hundreds of years, and its foundation had been hollowed out. Therefore, the battle of the heavenly desolate city was a real city-destroying battle. This time, it might also be a city-destroying battle. However, there was still a big difference between the two. At this time, in Han Fei's view, the overall strength here was even stronger than that of the current Scattered Stars Island, and it was a force that no force could ignore. In the eyes of thousands of wishes and prayers, Han Fei and the others collectively rose into the air. They flew all the way to the south coast, but Lu Renkuang and Li Luoluo didn't sense them. If he guessed right, they should be entangled in one of the 32 battlefields in the outer sea. For example, Sun Wu, who ranked 4th on the heavenly talent list, Li Xian, Zhang Mingquan, and the others were also missing. Han Fei wasn't so worried. Lu Renkuang wasn't weak at all. Besides, he had attracted most of the firepower, so there was nothing to worry about. However, Chao Jiaran and the others who said they were going to deal with the Chu sect were not here. They must have been delayed by something. Otherwise, they wouldn't have let Chao Qiu participate in this ultimate battle alone. If there was no accident, this battle would indeed determine the outcome of the City of Justice. History couldn't be changed, and the people of the City of Justice couldn't come back to life. They didn't know that they didn't exist at all. Instead, they were living in a special way. What they had to face every day was endless war. The City of Justice, the South Coast. Han Fei saw many big ships floating on the surface of the sea. They were the color of simple or old wood, and the hulls of the ships were engraved with complicated arrays and some special fishbone devices. Han Fei had seen them on the dragon boats and ghost ships. They were spiritual energy cannons that were used to cooperate with arrays. At this moment, Han Fei suddenly understood where the dragon boats came from. That thing was basically created based on the ships of the City of Justice, just that it was much larger. The size of the ship didn't matter. With a ready-made model, there was nothing in this world that couldn't be made. There were more than 20 such ships. None of them looked very big, and none of them were more than 1,000 meters long. However, Han Fei would never underestimate the combat power of those ships. Not only were there spirit-gathering formations carved on the hull of the ship, but there were also extremely complicated killing formations. At a glance, Han Fei found that there were more than 20 kinds of them. Of course, this was not the main point. At the forefront of all the ships, a large black ship that was about 3 times the size of an ordinary ship was floating on the surface of the sea. There were many holes of different sizes on the black sail, but none of them were big. The stern of the black ship was in the shape of an octopus. The octopus's claws were attached to the hull of the ship. At the very front of the ship was not the head of a dragon. Instead, it was abnormally sharp, like a steel blade standing upright. It could easily cut through the wind and waves. Integrated with the steel blade, the lower part of the blade was a shark with its mouth wide open, domineering and flamboyant. The wood of the black ship was black and shiny, and a silver pattern-like formation was imprinted on it. When he saw the formation, Han Fei was stunned. What a complicated formation! Han Fei didn't understand it at all. Or he only understood a little bit. It seemed to be a terrifying formation created by an extremely powerful array master. Even someone at Old Zhang's level couldn't compare with the array master who carved this formation. No wonder the Avenger is so famous. This formation alone is not something that ordinary people can create. It would be strange if it wasn't strong. While Han Fei was in a daze, a voice sounded in his mind, "Are you really not going to come to the Avenger?" Han Fei looked around and suddenly saw a woman in black and red standing at the top of the sail of the Avenger. The robe was fluttering in the wind. Also fluttering in the wind was a strand of long hair. The voice seemed to be from that person. Han Fei frowned. The legendary Shimin Linghan turned out to be a woman? Han Fei was speechless. This name was so domineering. He didn't expect it to be a woman. Besides, this woman was slender, her face delicate and cold, but her red lips were particularly charming. Han Fei took a breath and replied, "I live and die with my compatriots." The moment Shimin Linghan appeared, Han Fei instantly discovered that there were countless people looking at him with burning eyes, filled with unparalleled admiration. Han Fei felt that if Shimin Linghan said, "Go to hell," many people here might immediately cut their throats without batting an eyelid. Han Fei swallowed. A very prestigious woman, the strongest in the City of Justice, the legendary captain of the Avenger, must have had an extraordinary life. Zhang Xuanyu was stunned and murmured, "I love her, I love her." Smith. Han Fei slapped him on the head. "Shut up." Seeing Shimin Linghan glance at him, Zhang Xuanyu froze and thought, "I'm screwed. He's not an ordinary person. Will he beat me to death?" However, the corners of Shimin Linghan's mouth curled up slightly, and he casually averted his gaze. Luo Xiaobai scoffed. "Stupid fish." Han Fei also noticed that there were actually many people with the same expression as Zhang Xuanyu. Among them was Fifth Glimmer. He wasn't any better than Zhang Xuanyu. He was almost drooling. As for Chao Qiu, since he activated the bloodline of the god of war, he had become a downright cold Prince Charming. He didn't even look at women, as if he didn't see them. Han Fei sighed. It seemed that every fatty had great potential. Once they lost weight, handsome men would be no match for them. What would Lu Renkuang look like when he lost weight? While Han Fei was thinking, he heard a cold voice rippling in the air. Shimin Linghan said lightly, "In the struggle for the general trend, there is a slim chance of survival. In this boundless sea, the Sea Clan rose and slaughtered the human race. Once, when I was a child, I never thought that one day my ambition would be to fight for the human race and seek a place for the human race to survive. But now that I've become the city lord of the City of Justice, I have to do something." With that said, Shimin Linghan turned sideways, pointed at the vast sea, and said lightly, "This time, there is a slim chance of survival. However, as long as I, Shimin Linghan, am here, no one above the venerable realm can control this battle. Everyone, if we succeed in this battle, the human race will not be destroyed. If we lose this battle, I will die first. Ho! Ho! Follow City Lord Shimin closely and die 9 times without regret. Follow City Lord Shimin closely and die 9 times without regret." The more than 3,000 people around were all excited. Including Han Fei, it was actually very difficult for them to be excited. That woman had only said a few words, but it was enough to make them willing to die. Luo Xiaobai murmured, "What a strong aura, what a strong personality charm." In Han Fei's eyes, the woman was tall and straight. For some reason, Han Fei's heart skipped a beat. Why does she look so lonely? She's definitely a woman with a story. Han Fei could only guess so. It was the first time that Han Fei had seen a female venerable. Of course, if he counted his mother, Shimin Linghan was probably nothing. On the ship, he didn't know whether it was God's will or they did it on purpose. Anyway, there were more than 100 people from the big families on Han Fei's ship. The other 70 or 80 people were on another ship next door. Because it was a slim chance of survival, many people were chatting with each other. Zhang Xuanyu and Diwu Haiguang were sitting on the side of the ship, staring at the Black Avenger ahead. Luo Xiaobai was vigilantly observing everything, not in the mood to talk. Han Fei, on the other hand, was sitting on the edge of the deck with a young man. The man smiled and said, "Brother, I've never seen you before." Han Fei grinned and said, "At the moment of life and death, is this what you want to say?" The man laughed. "I'm just trying to strike up a conversation. Besides, with City Lord here, we will definitely win this battle." The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. "Are you so confident?" The man immediately became serious and tilted his head to look at Han Fei. "Of course. City Lord is a legend. There is nothing in this world that can stop City Lord." Han Fei was surprised. Is this Shimin Linghan so great in the eyes of ordinary people? Although Han Fei also wanted to ask how great Shimin Linghan was and what kind of story he had experienced, but it was obviously inappropriate to ask this question. In the City of Justice, it seemed that no one didn't know Shimin Linghan. If he asked, he was afraid that it would arouse suspicion. Han Fei immediately changed the topic. "Of course I believe that City Lord Shimin can win, but we may not survive. Why? Is there anything you want to do but haven't done yet?" Generally speaking, people would remember a lot before they died. Han Fei knew that these people probably wouldn't live long. He might as well let them reminisce. The man smiled and said, "That's a lot. My wish is to become a law enforcer." Han Fei despised him. "Is this what you want to do? Besides cultivation, what else do you know?" The man trembled with laughter. "What do you know? I told her that on the day I become a law enforcer, I will ask the City Lord to host a dual cultivation ceremony for us. She said that she also wants to become a law enforcer and then dual cultivation. Look, she only has a level 3 spiritual heritage and hasn't become a hidden fisher yet. How can I afford to wait? I won't listen to her. When I was 8 years old, I showed my talent. She was just a follower." Han Fei's body stiffened slightly, and he turned his head to look at the smiling man who was bragging about his life. Second update. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1101. The Avenger moved very fast, like a sharp knife cutting through the sea. Behind it, more than 20 large ships followed, looking magnificent. During this period, several sea demons tried to stop them, but Shimin Linghan pointed at them and directly obliterated them. Even the big fish tide was crushed in an instant. During the battle, Han Fei, like many people, lay on the bow and watched. Shimin Linghan stirred the sea with one hand, and a whirlpool suddenly appeared in the sea. In an instant, tens of thousands of creatures turned into blood mist. This was the first time that Han Fei had seen a venerable powerhouse attack. They were too strong. A strange power broke out in the sea, which seemed to have an indescribable charm. As the whirlpool rotated, everything collapsed. Zhang Xuanyu took a breath. Is this the venerable realm? It's too strong, isn't it? Luo Xiaobai narrowed her eyes. Taoist aura. Venerable powerhouses have all comprehended Taoist aura. We can't understand the laws of Tao, let alone understand them. Han Fei scoffed. When my father beat people, I didn't see any Taoist aura. Luo Xiaobai tilted her head and glanced at Han Fei. Maybe, uncle is acting cool. Han Fei, Diwu Glimmer said leisurely, your mentality is really good. You know, once the war starts, our war will also start at any time. Han Fei wondered, when do you think it will happen? They have to find a chance, right? Otherwise, they might have been beaten to death. Diwu Glimmer scoffed. Oh, how would I know? I'm not on their side. However, based on my own experience, I only have a chance to fight in the middle and late stages of this battle. At this moment, Han Fei suddenly looked back, only to see Chu Qingyan walking over. Luo Xiaobai asked, what are you doing here? Chu Qingyan sneered and looked at Han Fei. It seems that not all of your people are here. Han Fei sneered. As if all of your people are here? Are you sure you can defeat us? Chu Qingyan said lightly, can't you? Before Han Fei spoke, Zhang Xuanyu suddenly stretched his head over. Come on, do you want to eat? I'm so handsome. I'll give you a bite. Chu Qingyan's face darkened. Zhang Xuanyu, you don't seem that powerful. Zhang Xuanyu shook his head and pretended to be surprised. Am I not powerful? Since we're going to fight soon, why don't we find a place with no one around and let you experience my power? You are looking for. Chu Qingyan felt a chill run down her spine. She discovered that someone was looking at her. She was immediately surprised. As an outsider, he shouldn't be the center of attention. Why would Shimin Linghan's gaze fall here? Zhang Xuanyu said shamelessly, what am I looking for? Is he looking for you? Diwu Haiguang patted Zhang Xuanyu's shoulder and said, you don't pay attention to your words. It's too dirty. Look at me, I'm fine. Long legs, since there's still time, let's date for half an incense stick of time, what do you think? Humph. Shameless. Sigh. Don't go, I'm telling the truth. Han Fei was speechless. Luckily, he hadn't met these two people before. Otherwise, who knew how many girls would be ruined by them? Luo Xiaobai had already developed the habit of automatically ignoring it. When Zhang Xuanyu was bullshitting or even bragging, she usually automatically ignored him. Now there was one more, so she also began to automatically ignore Diwu Haiguang's words. Chu Qingyan came over just to provoke them. If Han Fei and the others could mess up, they would naturally be unable to resist their actions in the next battle, which was what she would be happy to see. However, this provocation was easily resolved by the two soul balls. Han Fei came back to his senses, and as soon as he looked up, he saw Shimin Linghan looking at him. Han Fei didn't feel good at all. Wait, you are a dignified venerable, why do you keep looking at me? In his mind, a voice suddenly sounded. Who else could it be but Shimin Linghan? Shimin Linghan said, you look very much like someone I know. The more I look at you, the more you look like her. Han Fei didn't know what was going on. Is this venerable flirting with me? I'm just a young man. Have I been flirted with? Isn't this too old-fashioned? The point is, I've been flirted with by someone else. Is this venerable in front of me a human? Or is she a soul? I don't even know. It's really painful to be flirted with. Han Fei swallowed. Master, my face is quite ordinary. Maybe it's a common face. Shimin Linghan looked at Han Fei again. I don't mean your face. It's just an illusory feeling. You look like an old friend I know. Han Fei wanted to smile, but he didn't dare to. It's obvious that he's trying to set me up, and he still feels it? I feel like I'm the sea god. What's the use of feeling? Seeing Han Fei lower his head, Luo Xiaobai couldn't help but say, What are you thinking about? Han Fei quickly came back to his senses. Nothing. When Han Fei looked up again, he found that Shimin Linghan had turned his head away. Many people around said, Master was looking at me just now. Someone sneered. Nonsense. Master was looking at me just now. Someone said contemptuously, Why don't you look at yourself? Master was obviously looking at me. For a moment, many people argued endlessly. Han Fei thought to himself, I don't care who she is looking at. Just don't look at me anymore. About an hour later, Han Fei suddenly sensed something. He clenched his fists subconsciously. Oh no, danger is coming. Suddenly, Shimin Linghan's voice sounded. Those who stand in my way will die. Han Fei and the others only saw the void shake, and darkness suddenly enveloped the entire sky. In the void, a huge crack appeared. The next scene made Han Fei and the others' blood freeze. Dozens of octopus tentacles nearly 100 meters long opened the crack, and a pair of crimson eyes lit up from the depths of the crack. Then, a pair of big hands tore the crack even wider. Through the crack, Han Fei saw a human-shaped head, with tentacles below the eyes. The head was like a boulder, poking out of the crack. Shimin Linghan appeared directly in front of the void crack. Although he was small, he was not afraid at all. Holding 2 scimitars in his hands, there was a rumble in front of him. 2 scorching knife lights cut through the darkness, revealing an X-shaped red mist knife light. The creature that had not yet crawled out of the crack roared and spewed out cold ice, trying to block it. However, the knife light was as scorching as the sun, cutting through the darkness. With a swish, it fell on the pair of big hands and directly cut them back. Boom! As Shimin Linghan clenched with one hand, the void quickly closed. Shimin Linghan said coldly, Get lost. After saying this, Shimin Linghan shouted in a low voice without looking back, Keep going. Under everyone's gaze, Shimin Linghan held the 2 knives upside down, slashed out a crack in the void, stepped into it, and disappeared. Seeing this scene on the Avenger, 6 people directly flew into the sky, all of whom were explorers. But one of them shouted, Go forward. In less than half an hour, the sea began to boil. In the distance, a huge crab emerged from the bottom of the sea. Its pincers were like giant scissors, slapping the sea, causing a tsunami. A giant octopus stretched out its claws, intending to block the way of the Avenger. A flying python soared into the sky, which could also be called a wind snake, opened its big mouth, and a fishy wind blew. Buzz, buzz. The 3 explorers charged out and shouted, Continue forward. When the 5 giant beasts appeared, there was only 1 explorer left. The man looked back and shouted, All big ships, activate the arrays. Buzz, buzz, buzz. For a time, more than 20 colorful big ships rushed on the sea. And Han Fei had already perceived that 500 kilometers away, there was an undersea mountain, standing alone, with dark mountain walls. Near the mountain, the gravity was abnormal, and creatures were floating in the air. Similarly, when he found the mountain, Han Fei saw a big turtle covered in thick armor. In addition to the big turtle, there were more than 100 giant creatures. The explorer at the front roared, Attention, everyone! Empty that mountain, even if you die. Law enforcers control the ships, hidden fishers move the mountain. With that, the explorer also tore through the sky and left. At this moment, the sea was already full of raging waves and tsunamis. The venerables had their own battles, and the explorers had their own battles. They were holding up the strongest ones. Swish, swish, swish. A law enforcer landed on Han Fei's ship. Or rather, on every big ship, there were law enforcers. These people shouted in a low voice, Everyone, get ready. In 100 minutes, the vengeance array will be activated. Move the mountain. While these law enforcers were talking, a circular array of ships was set up with the Avenger as the center. Some big ships were moving horizontally, and some were connected head to tail. 100 minutes passed in a flash, and Han Fei said to Luo Xiaobai and the others via voice transmission, "I've sensed it. 50 kilometers ahead, be careful of the attacks of the big clans." Diwu Haiguang said, "Don't panic, it's not time yet. If this mountain was so easy to move, how could the City of Justice have been destroyed? Next, there will be a battle of thousands of people. Don't worry about them attacking us." Before Han Fei and the others could ask more, they heard a peak-level law enforcer rushing out from the Avenger. "All hidden fishers, charge with me." Swish, swish, swish. On more than 20 ships, figures took off and followed the law enforcer. Duo Haiguang said, "Go. Catch up with them." Asking for votes, end of this chapter. Chapter 1102. They didn't know anything about the Age of Doom. He had never been to the War Soul realm before, so he could only take it one step at a time. With a swish, the law enforcer in the front pulled out a fish skin map. All of a sudden, a ray of scarlet light that was as bright as the sun shone on everyone. When the light shone, Han Fei felt that his blood was swelling and his body began to heat up, as if he were full of strength. The enforcer roared, "Charge!" More than 3,000 people as one, like an incomparably huge sharp knife, swept across the sky. A strange scarlet aura flame soared into the sky. Han Fei remembered the charge of the sea demons. When hundreds of half-mermaids and half-mermaids charged with secret methods, they would condense an extremely powerful force, like a manifestation of their will. At this moment, it was the same for the humans. Han Fei could clearly feel that his strength had increased by about 10%. Don't look down on a mere 10% increase in strength. However, the increase in combat power of more than 3,000 people was accompanied by the descent of some kind of will. Their overall strength was terrifying. Bang bang bang. When all the hidden fishers were flying in the air, within the range of the ship array, a huge array was formed with a range of more than 50 kilometers. This was the first time that Han Fei had seen such a large array. Although this large formation looked like it was formed by countless small formations, it was actually very powerful. However, it was obvious that the Avenger was the core of the formation, and it was a large formation that had been reforged from a small formation. More than 20 law enforcement officers were controlling the formation and protecting them. It was obvious how terrifying it was. In Han Fei's perception, wherever the array passed, half-mermaids and half-mermaids were directly minced by the invisible sword shadows, and ice crystal shells were cut into pieces by the sword shadows. Almost in an instant, more than half of the creatures in the formation perished. Luo Xiaobai looked at Han Fei in shock. Is this an array that can trap and kill explorers? Although Han Fei found it hard to believe, he still nodded. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about using a formation to trap an explorer. However, Han Fei also knew that it was almost impossible to trap an expert of that level for even a moment. However, the ship formation did it. Not only did he do it, but he was also extremely powerful. Could it trap and kill explorers? He didn't know. But if the law enforcers entered, they would definitely die. Enter the sea. The law enforcer at the front shouted again and took the lead to rush into the sea. Plop, plop. It was like putting dumplings into a pot, and also like a sharp knife stabbing into the sea. Everyone entered the sea at an extremely fast speed, heading straight for the dark mountain. Han Fei couldn't help being moved. In his eyes, Shimin Linghan had already made ample preparations for his attack this time around. The Venerable One personally took action. The 6 explorers attacked the sea monsters, and the formation of ships controlled and killed them. In addition to the enforcers controlling the ship, there were nearly 50 other enforcers guarding the Avenger. Even the battle on the ancient battlefield on the Scattered Stars Island couldn't compare to this level of battle. Diwu Haiguang's expression turned slightly serious, and he transmitted his voice. We can't count on Brother Luo and Chao Tian to rush over. They must have been trapped in other battlefields, unable to escape. Remember, I can only guarantee that the aristocratic families won't make a move before the formation is broken. Once the ship formation is broken, don't hesitate and escape immediately. Han Fei looked at Chao Qiu. Chao Qiu looked indifferent. I know what to do. Zhang Xuanyu, I just want to ask, how exactly does moving a mountain work? Diwu Haiguang grinned. We are moving the mountain now. As he spoke, the 3,000 people, with the law enforcer as the sharp knife, directly loaded onto the dark mountain. Crack, crack, crack. All the people were like swords, cutting the mountain horizontally. Han Fei and the others rushed into the mountain one after another. Back then, Chen Huangdian moved 800 kilometers of the mountain alone. Now, 3,000 hidden fishers wanted to move the floating stone mountain with a radius of more than 100 kilometers, and the gap was suddenly obvious. More than 3,000 people, like one, walked through the mountain just to cut this mountain. In the end, they worked together to move it. It was easy for others to move a mountain, but in fact, how heavy was a real mountain? Han Fei used to boast about the origin of the Taihang royal house. There was a golden armored giant, carrying a mountain on his back, stepping on the void and moving the mountain. At this moment, the golden armored giant was replaced by 3,000 hidden fishers. However, Han Fei didn't seem to need 3,000 hidden fishers to move such a mountain, right? However, only a few seconds after this idea appeared, in Han Fei's perception, he discovered that a huge number of marine creatures were gathering from all directions. The ship array failed? What's that? As soon as the mountain was cut in half, Han Fei found that the island was surrounded from all directions. Behind everyone, a large number of marine creatures, fearless, rushed into the mountain against the ship array. And in the ship array, a mermaid appeared, riding a fat worm as heavy as a stupid bear. As for the mermaid expert was enveloped by a ball of water that spun at high speed. The mermaid had nothing in her hands and turned into armor. As the mermaid raised her hands, a huge vortex rolled up on the bottom of the sea, so terrifying that Han Fei noticed that the seawater inside the mountain was flowing back and being sucked away. Another explorer, so strong. Many people saw this scene and were a little shocked. In this world, there was someone who could resist the ship array by himself? The leading law enforcer shouted, "Don't worry about those battles. Carry the mountain and go." As if having expected that things wouldn't be so easy, the more than 50 law enforcers who were supposed to guard the Avenger all went into the sea. Among them, 20 of them directly besieged the mermaid. Everyone else was rushing towards the floating stone mountain at high speed. With only more than 30 people, it was obviously impossible to protect the entire area of more than 100 kilometers. Because there were too many marine creatures popping up, many of which were hidden fishers. Under this endless impact, these law enforcers activated all their secret methods and domains. They even began to burn their bloodlines just to protect Han Fei and the others from moving the mountain. Crack, crack, bam, bam, bam. When Han Fei and the others rushed forward, suddenly, above the sky, a void crack was torn open, and a big shell jumped out of the void. Clang. The shell clanged, and the sound waves fell on the floating stone mountain like a tide. Immediately afterward, a long tongue stretched out from the shell like a whip, lashing straight at the floating stone mountain. Wherever the long tongue passed, there was a raging fire. But before the long tongue fell, it was caught by a big bloody hand and dragged back into the void crack together with the shell. Needless to say, that person must be Shimin Linghan. Han Fei was shocked. Shimin Linghan seemed to be seriously injured. How many people was she fighting? Of course, now was not the time to consider this. Although the shell was pulled back, the rolling sound waves bombarded the mountain, shaking it. Many people suddenly vomited a large mouthful of blood and were directly injured. Han Fei and the others only felt a slight impact falling on them, but it couldn't shake them. Boom! At the moment when the mountain was completely broken, the law enforcer shouted again, "Let's go! The Dare to Die team will cover us." Dare to Die team? Han Fei thought, why didn't I know there was a Dare to Die team? Then, Han Fei saw some older hidden fishers break away from the blades of fighting will one after another. Someone laughed. As long as the human race is alive, The city of justice will not be destroyed. Someone pressed his armor box, madly burning his blood, and roared crazily, "I've lived enough. Little fish, let me show you what the human race is." Someone smiled casually, and 1,000 vines burst out. No family behind you, only a city. Risking your life to protect a city, risking your life to reunite with your family, is there anything better in the world than this? The hidden fishers left the team one by one, and in the blink of an eye, there were only thousands of people left. The rest, Han Fei and the others, carried the mountain. Voila! There were still nearly 2,000 people who went to sea with the mountain on their backs, moving extremely fast. This was a battle for the mountain. Shiman Linghan was bold enough and willing to spend a lot of money. Either live or die, there was no way back. Han Fei and the others succeeded in taking the mountain. However, Han Fei didn't look happy, because he saw the big fish tide. As far as his eyes could see, there were endless sea creatures. Shrimp soldiers and crab generals rushed on the sea. Seahorses galloped and roared. Countless starfish, lobsters, and sailfish were chasing them frantically. At the bottom of the sea, the battle had begun. More than 300 armorists opened their weapons and blocked the entire area of the floating stone mountain. Vines suddenly grew in all directions, and giant vines intertwined, hacking in all directions. The leading law enforcer shouted angrily, "Let's go, they are heroes. We must bring this mountain back." As soon as this person shouted, a large number of creatures glowing with blue light swooped down from the sky. Someone shouted in a low voice, "It's the shooting star flying fish." Swish, swish, swish. Another 100 hidden fishers spontaneously left the team and roared at the people carrying the mountain, "Go, go." At that moment, it would be a lie to say that he wasn't moved. These were all hidden fishers. How difficult it was for humans to cultivate a hidden fisher. God knew how many battles it took for one hidden fisher to emerge from tens of millions of people. But today, in order to snatch a mountain, thousands of people risked their lives. For a city, for a city, for a city of people, for the survival of the human race. Han Fei was a little jealous. He really didn't know why humans and the Sea Clan fought. Human beings lived on land, and the Sea Clan lived in the sea. Wasn't it nice? What was the point of risking his life to fight like this? Chapter 1103. The price of war must be peace. But now it seemed that it was almost impossible for the Sea Clan and humans to coexist peacefully. And the battlefield of humans had become a struggle for survival. At this time, on the sea, there were shocking waves, one after another. On the sea, there were already mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Nearly half of the law enforcers who had just moved the mountain to block the way had died in such a short time. Han Fei and the others were carrying the mountain. On the sea, many law enforcers shouted, "Ship array, big turtle carrying stone." At this moment, with the Avenger as the leader, above the hull, a huge turtle shell phantom floated in the air. Buzz, buzz. Pieces of blue tortoise shell appeared. With the ship array as the boundary, a huge turtle shell appeared. How could Han Fei and the others not know what this was for? Who knew how long it would take for them to return to the City of Justice? Of course, they still had to rely on big ships to carry it. Rumble! The process was unexpectedly smooth. When the floating stone mountain was placed on the turtle shell, everything was going according to plan. Diwu Haiguang said, "From now on, be careful. Keep your soul awake. Don't get out of this timeline." Han Fei was stunned. What timeline? Where does this timeline come from? Diwu Haiguang said, "In the ideal palace, everything we see is related to the timeline. Once you enter a special state, you are likely to be separated from this timeline. Now, don't enter other timelines. Although this place is different from the prehistoric Soul Realm, and there is no nonsense time span, we still have to be careful." Luo Xiaobai and Zhang Xuanyu knew very well what the timeline was. After all, they had experienced it in the prehistoric Soul Realm. But Han Fei was different. He remembered the previous battle. He had clearly transformed into the supreme yin-yang wheel. As a result, When he woke up, the battle was already over. Han Fei quickly said, "You mean if we leave the current timeline, we will stray into other timelines?" Diwu Haiguang nodded. "Of course, this is the case in the entire ideal palace." Han Fei asked warily, "How is that possible? According to what you said, shouldn't the first 3 soul realms also be related to the timeline? Why didn't we notice it?" Diwu Glimmer sneered. "That's because that timeline is fixed, or rather, cyclical. For example, the recovery of the spiritual plants in the monster plant soul realm. I suspect that it is not the power of the ideal palace that is recovering them, but time. Otherwise, there would be people picking soul fruits, digging up visualization fossils, and collecting soul crystals every day. No matter how strong the power supporting the ideal palace is, can it be endlessly poured in the power of the divine soul?" Hearing Diwu Haiguang's words, Han Fei was startled. An unbelievable thought flashed through his mind. His mother had once said that the river of time could actually be stolen and intercepted. According to what Diwu Dim Light had said, could it be that the ideal palace was not simply a place of the divine soul? Was it a river of time? Han Fei felt his blood freeze. If the ideal palace was the river of time, then, suddenly, Han Fei thought of an impossible possibility. In fact, although the ideal palace was made up of soul bodies, it was not a soul body. But what he had seen, and experienced, everything was real. It was very likely that there would be problems when his physical body entered the timeline. But the divine soul might not necessarily have this restriction. It was just that he, the outsiders, was in a different timeline from the things and people he had experienced in the ideal palace. They were fighting at a certain fixed time. Why did he see that these people around him were full of dead energy? Who knew how many fucking tens of thousands of years ago these people had actually already fallen in the true long river of time? And when he looked at them with the eyes of an outsider, he would feel that they were full of dead energy. Because in time, they were dead, but at a certain stage, they were still alive. He observed them, but separated by an invisible time barrier, he felt that they were dead. When they looked at him and the others, they were also separated by an invisible time barrier. Because he and the others came from the future, they were naturally alive. However, Han Fei had another question. Across the timeline, didn't he and the others also eat the soul fruits? Couldn't they also kill each other? Those people in the undying soul realm, had they already fallen in that timeline? However, Han Fei suddenly seemed to understand something. It seemed natural for the people of the future to take what was left by the past. However, the people of the past took what was left by the future. Han Fei's mind was a little confused. Although he had some inferences, there was no way to verify anything. Even what he was thinking now was just his own guess. A guess without facts was always just a guess. Although Han Fei felt that this guess might be very close to the truth. Just when Han Fei and the others gathered together, waiting for the ship formation to speed up and rush out of the sea area, someone suddenly shouted, "Look, what's that?" In the distance, 100 kilometers away, a large wave was rushing towards the ship formation at an incredible speed. In the huge wave, there was a huge black shadow, like a creature. But Diwu Hazy Light shouted, "Don't perceive it." However, when Diwu Hazy Light shouted, Han Fei's perception had already swept over. As a result, the next moment, he vomited a mouthful of blood. He hurriedly cast the divine healing technique on himself. Don't perceive it. Just now, the moment Han Fei tried to perceive it, his soul was injured. Before Luo Xiaobai and Zhang Xuanyu had time to perceive it, they saw Han Fei vomit blood out of thin air. And many people around him vomited blood one after another. He couldn't help but ask, "Fei, what did you see?" Han Fei felt his scalp go numb. Instead of answering Zhang Xuanyu's words, he looked directly at Diwu Hazy Light. "Do you want to run?" Diwu Hazy Light shook his head. "Wait." Han Fei then looked at Zhang Xuanyu. A huge monster. Han Fei could only describe it in this way. Because the creature he saw had a crab's head, mantis shrimp-like limbs, a flood dragon's body, and a shell like that of a rock-carrying turtle. Its body was black and shiny, densely covered with spikes. It was simply indescribable. A void crack was torn open, and a rainbow pierced through the sky and the earth, nailing the black shadow in the huge wave. Hoop! 50 kilometers away, an incomparably huge black shadow could be seen leaping out of the waves. Two claws more than 300 meters long slashed at the rainbow in the void. Buzz, buzz, buzz. At that moment, the rainbow in the void seemed to be frozen, and the rainbow in the void was blocked. Looking closely, it turned out to be a scimitar, Schimmenlingen scimitar. Crack, crack, crack. However, the monster's body was too huge. At this time, it all jumped out of the sea, and its body length was probably nearly 500 meters. Schimmenlingen scimitar was breaking inch by inch. Kacha! Rumble! The boundless explosion stirred up huge waves. The strong waves rushed to Han Fei and the others in just 10 seconds. At this moment, an explorer, the explorer who had talked to Han Fei before, blocked in front of the floating stone mountain. With the strength of a single person, he blocked this terrifying power. The airwaves rolled over both sides of the floating stone mountain, stretching out for hundreds of kilometers. Gulp! Countless people swallowed. What kind of creature is this? How can it be so terrifying? Han Fei's eyes, on the other hand, had quickly returned to the explorer. At this moment, the explorer was dripping with blood. Previously, he fought with a marine creature at the spirit-breaking realm and was seriously injured, losing an arm. At this time, his hair was messy, holding a shield with one hand, and he didn't take a step back. This person shouted, "Retreat quickly." Rumble! Just as this person finished speaking, a terrifying explosion broke out under the water again. The Dao-seeking mermaids and mermaids trapped in the ship formation seemed to have seized the opportunity when the ship formation was retreating, detonated their weapons, and launched their strongest blow. A big black ship suddenly shattered, and the law enforcer on the ship was immediately seriously injured. Han Fei and the others were directly knocked dozens of meters into the sky by this terrifying impact. Under this blow, at least 50 hidden fissures were directly blown to the sky. Revenge array, suppress it for me. The dense array light lit up again. Through his perception, Han Fei found that the mermaids and mermaids under the water seemed to be seriously injured and were frantically bombarding the ship formation. With a thought, Han Fei cast a divine healing technique on the explorer. The latter glanced back at Han Fei and grinned. It's useless. This person was not anxious, but took a deep breath, looked up at the void and murmured, "This is the limit of the city of justice." After saying that, the explorer stepped forward in the void, covering 1,000 meters with each step. In the distance, the huge monster arched into the water again and rushed over. Obviously, it blocked the attack that pierced through the sky and the earth just now. The middle-aged explorer's blood was burning, but he stopped halfway and chuckled in a low voice. If the human race doesn't perish, one day, we will fight to the end of the sea and break through the eternal darkness. However, I'm going to go first. Old Jia. In the void, a delicate voice seemed to be calling the name of the middle-aged man. However, at this moment, the middle-aged man's body had already collapsed. A scarlet long knife cut through the sea and blocked the current. There was crimson under the knife, like the tears of the sea, flowing for 100 kilometers. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1104. This kind of scene was too magnificent. Just now, the power of just one slash swept across hundreds of kilometers. Now, how could an explorer's attack be underestimated? Without the protection of a strong master, how could this mountain be moved? However, Fifth Glimmer didn't speak at this moment and still looked quite calm. Han Fei was slightly relieved and thought to himself, could it be that another human expert has come to stop me? On the other side, Chu Qingyan shouted, "Nanshi, help me stop Chao Qiu later. Qingyi, you just need to hold Fifth Glimmer for a while. Everyone remember, there is only one target we need to hunt, that is Han Fei. As for the others, try not to fight. Once Han Fei is dead, everything will be settled." Han Fei was paying attention to Chu Qingyan all the time. With the strength of his soul, how could he not hear what Chu Qingyan said? He just wanted to curse this woman for being really vicious, but on second thought, it seemed that Chu Qingyan was going to fight later. Later? Han Fei asked Fifth Glimmer via voice transmission, what else will happen later? Diwu Glimmer glanced at Han Fei. Are you sure you want to know in advance? That scene is boring to listen to. Han Fei said angrily, nonsense, I have to seize the time. You go first. Diwu Glimmer was slightly shocked. Seize the time? Now, aren't we in a very passive position? However, he couldn't change Han Fei's mind, so he could only say, what else can we do? Shimin Linghan has come out. Han Fei said in surprise, and then? Diwu Glimmer said, then we can run away. Han Fei's heart sank immediately. There were only two possibilities for Shimin Linghan to come out. One was that the battle between the Venerables was over and Shimin Linghan won. The other was that the battle was not over yet, and Shimin Linghan had to come out to save the situation. Since Diwu Glimmer said they would run away, the possibility tended to be the latter. If this was the case, Chu Qingyan should make a move on the way. But if they wanted to run away, many people would run together. How could she have a chance to make a move? Bam! Like a thunderclap, Han Fei really saw a scene more terrifying than a mushroom cloud. The seawater flowed backward, and a huge whirlpool spanned more than 30 kilometers. A circle of seawater rushed to the sky like a pillar. However, in the blink of an eye, a large number of marine creatures crumbled. Even the ships that were already 100 miles away were almost sucked back. The seawater seemed to fall from the 9 heavens and formed waves. With an unbelievable speed, they covered the sky and covered the sun. However, before this, a figure suddenly appeared on the floating rock mountain. Who else could it be but Shimin Linghan? At this moment, Shimin Linghan did not look any different from when he had left. However, when Han Fei saw the blood on her lips, his hand that was holding a machete trembled slightly. From this, it could be seen that Shimin Linghan's battle was definitely not easy. Shimin Linghan stretched out a hand, and an endless amount of seawater gathered like a spiral ball of water. The water ball was continuously being compressed, and the speed was so fast that the vast expanse of seawater in Shimin Linghan's palm became a glowing water ball the size of a palm. Han Fei took a deep breath. Can it be played like this? Others might not know it, but Han Fei saw that endless spiritual energy was being injected into the water ball. Not to mention compressing a water ball, it was difficult to compress a huge amount of spiritual energy to such a size, right? Han Fei could predict that once this water ball was compressed successfully, it might be more powerful than the strike of the explorer just now. After all, Han Fei knew the concept of pressure. The smaller the endless power was compressed, the more concentrated the power would be. Shimin Linghan's other hand was not idle either. Endless spiritual energy was injected into the machete. When the machete lit up, Han Fei, Luo Xiaobai, and the others were slightly stunned. Because the machete was shrouded in black and white strange light. In the eyes of Luo Xiaobai and the others, although they rarely saw Han Fei use the yin-yang wheel, they all knew that Han Fei had such a hidden trick. Han Fei was also surprised. The black and white lights were intertwining. What kind of combat skill did Shimin Linghan use? His first thought was, could Shimin Linghan have something to do with the Immortal Palace? After all, Han Fei had never seen anyone else with such a skill. And little black and little white seemed to be extraordinary. Besides, the 9th Immortal Palace was called the Yin-Yang Heaven. Was there really no special mark? As soon as Shimin Linghan appeared, the void crack opened. However, what appeared was no longer the previous giant octopus monster, but a weirdo with a human body and a shrimp body. Although it was a shrimp body, it actually looked a bit like a spider. However, it was not as fat as a spider. The weirdo held 2 giant hammers and laughed. Shimin Linghan, the former pirate king, slaughtered countless sea creatures. Have you ever thought that you would have such a day? On the other side, the void was torn open again. The previous giant octopus monster appeared again, and its 2 giant hands tore open the void. However, Han Fei keenly discovered that the octopus-like chin of the creature had been cut off more than half. At this moment, those tentacles were growing rapidly. Shimin Linghan was unmoved and was still compressing the water ball in his hand. However, as soon as she stepped on the ground, all the arrays on the Avenger changed. Everyone only felt that the array of ships suddenly deformed and became arrow-shaped, slightly different from what they had seen before, but extremely fast. Want to escape? Did you ask for my permission? The half-human, half-shrimp monster raised the heaven-reaching hammer. Under the hammer's strike, thunder fell, and electric arcs filled the air. When it fell from the sky, it was accompanied by thunder and flames, like Mars hitting Earth. The only thing that everyone could still look forward to was Shimin Linghan. Han Fei couldn't help but wonder how much pressure Shimin Linghan was under alone. There were two venerable level creatures in the sky and one in the sea. The one in the sea had already rushed out of the huge waves. Its body was heavily damaged, and half of one of its limbs had been broken off. The explorer's life-risking blow only caused such little damage to it. Even Han Fei couldn't help but feel helpless. How could he fight against three venerables? Shimin Linghan said coldly, "The city of justice is just the city of justice. I am not the strongest, and the human race will eventually rise against the trend. I believe that in the future, there will be a person who can break through this endless sea. Today, I admit that I was tricked by you. But if you want to kill me, you have to see if you are qualified." Swish. Shimin Linghan raised the scimitar in his hand and a huge black and white wheel appeared. This? Han Fei gasped. The supreme yin-yang wheel? No. That attack looked like a yin-yang wheel. However, the murderous intent in it was too strong, causing the wind within a kilometer to be as sharp as knives. It was not as pure as the supreme yin-yang wheel. Luo Xiaobai asked, "This is?" Han Fei shook his head. "It's not the same as me." Although Han Fei said that, he was sure that Shimin Linghan's yin-yang wheel definitely had something to do with him. At this time, Han Fei remembered what Shimin Linghan said. He was a bit similar to someone she knew. Han Fei didn't know what to say. Was she talking about Old Han? He could only think of Old Han. He didn't know which era Old Han was from either. He could even win over his mother on the other side of the river of time. Was there anything he couldn't do? But Old Han, this shameless man, wouldn't be too timing, right? Was there any unknown story between Shimin Linghan and Old Han? The yin-yang wheel resisted the huge hammer shadow. The compressed water ball in Shimin Linghan's hand was also pushed out. At the moment the water ball left his hand, a road appeared on the sea. Spiritual energy followed and seawater surrounded it, making the water ball bigger and bigger. In an instant, it became 100 meters in size. After that, Shimin Linghan pointed at the void and drew an array in the void. There were only 7 strokes. However, Han Fei saw a 7-layered killing array. 7 flood dragons rose up in the wind and rushed to bite the octopus monster. 1 against 3. For the first time, Han Fei looked at a woman in a different light. If it was Old Han, Han Fei didn't think he would do this because he could predict it in advance. If it was Ren Tianfen, that old guy was unscrupulous and could destroy a 1,000-star city by himself, not to mention twice. And this Shimin Linghan was the 3rd peerless strong master that Han Fei had seen. It was even possible that it had something to do with him, which made him feel a little closer. Han Fei felt that he couldn't just ignore it, could he? Han Fei immediately said to him via voice transmission, "No matter what the situation is, don't easily abandon life and death. Only when you are alive will there be hope." Shimin Linghan's body trembled slightly, but he didn't look back. She stood proudly on the top of the floating stone mountain, her clothes and long hair fluttering in the wind. She stood tall and straight. It was not an exaggeration to call her valiant and heroic at all. Oh! In the sea, there was a roar. In the sky, there was a roar. Although the speed of the ship formation was fast, where could it run in just 10 minutes? After 10 breaths, Shimin Linghan took a step forward, and his cold voice reverberated in the air. "Someone once told me that one must embrace the light. Even if one is in darkness, one must become that ray of light for oneself." It was unknown who Shimin Linghan was directing these words at. Anyway, after saying that, she disappeared from the floating stone mountain in one step. Han Fei listened and felt very uncomfortable. Old Han, don't tell me you've abandoned her after using her? The point is, I don't have the ability to participate in a battle of this level. I can't help you save people. Han Fei fell silent, feeling uncomfortable. Not long after he felt uncomfortable, he heard a law enforcer shouting, "Everyone, surround the ship and prepare for battle. The city lord has done the best he can. We need to do the rest ourselves. We have to go back to the city of justice." Someone roared, "Go back to the city of justice." Someone shouted loudly, "As long as I don't die, I will definitely go back to the city of justice." The ship formation rushed all the way for more than 3,000 kilometers. The big fish tide broke out and countless sea creatures attacked the ship formation. At this time, it was inevitable. Since it was a trap set by others, how could there be no means? Han Fei and the others also joined the battle. However, the 5 of them did not separate, because Chu Qingyan and the others might stop them at any time. During this period, there was a big turtle that wanted to fly out of the void. In the end, he was dragged back by an explorer who was covered in blood. After running for about 8,000 kilometers, there were less than 20 law enforcers left. The number of hidden fishers dropped from 2,000 to 1,300. The rest had all perished. Just when many people were excited that they could really escape this time, suddenly, a big black ship suddenly collapsed. It turned out that the mermaids who had been trapped in the ship formation had broken the formation. The law enforcers shouted, "Keep running, leave it to us." At the same time, Chu Qingyan shouted, "Do it." Asking for votes. End of this chapter. Chapter 1105. Han Fei had been paying attention to Chu Qingyan. He even saw that more than 10 people from the big clans had died. However, Chu Qingyan had never taken action. It turned out that Chu Qingyan had been waiting for this moment. However, Fifth Glimmer said in surprise, "How could it be now?" Swish, swish. Luo Xiaobai immediately controlled the vines and directly buckled Han Fei, Zhang Xuanyu, Fifth Glimmer, and Chao Qiu. Chu Qingyan had been holding back until now. That meant that she definitely had a way to attack them. However, this was obviously not a suitable place to attack. Once they attacked, weren't they afraid that these people would gang up on them? Not to mention that these prehistoric humans were not strong, but each of them was actually very extraordinary. Whether it was body refining or combat skills, they were all very strong. As the saying went, there were no weaklings on the battlefield. Luo Xiaobai didn't understand what Chu Qingyan meant. Chu Qingyan and more than 160 people suddenly took advantage of the situation to attack. Among them, Yang Nanshi blasted at Chao Qiu, and a woman in green rushed at Diwu Glimmer. But Han Fei was slightly puzzled. Why did Yang Nanshi's speed become so slow? Not only that, as soon as the 5th Glimmer Shadowless arrow was shot out, a dragon roar suddenly sounded in the air, stabbing at the woman in green. Chu Qingyan's face changed drastically. "There's a traitor." Han Fei's first reaction was that Yang Nanshi betrayed them. Did he actually persuade this silly loli? Diwu Glimmer was also a little surprised. "Who is helping me?" When he said this, Chu Qingyan knew that he couldn't wait any longer and immediately took action. A ripple of white light suddenly spread in all directions. Time freeze. Han Fei was shocked. Fuck, what kind of divine ability is this? This woman can freeze time? Zhang Xuanyu thought, fuck, how is this possible? Luo Xiaobai quickly said, wait, no, time is frozen. What are we talking about? Han Fei was also stunned. Yes, he seemed to be able to move. Suddenly, Han Fei felt his blood freeze. Fuck, the Avenger is going to disappear. Everyone was horrified. In their vision, the fleet was still rushing forward. However, after rushing for a short distance, all the other big ships, including the Avenger, became weaker and weaker. Diwu Xiaoguang shouted, not good, the long legs have forcefully changed the timeline. Our timeline is different from the Avengers. Han Fei and the others were dumbfounded. Can you play like this? Zhang Xuanyu yelled, if it's that simple, why didn't this woman make a move earlier? Chao Qiu said indifferently, the Venerable is here. Zhang Xuanyu was speechless. Right? No matter how powerful Chu Qingyan was, he was only a hidden fisher at this moment. If he made a move in front of a venerable and an explorer, there was a high chance that he would be stopped. And when they were moving the mountain, everyone was too fast. She didn't have a chance. When Mountain Carrier returned to the ship array, the Venerable One was also watching this side. There was also a group of law enforcers beside him. The hidden fishers were all carrying Mountain Carrier, so they didn't have a chance to make a move. It was only at this moment that the experts were not present. The enforcer went to fight the merman. The people around her were all hidden fishers. No one could stop her at all. Han Fei couldn't help but take a deep breath. This woman was really tolerant. At this moment, their timeline was only slightly different from the normal timeline. It was also this slight difference. After all, the time was different. Now, only they, Chu Qingyan, and the others were left here. However, there was also good news. The good news was that Yang Nanshi betrayed them. No, Yang Nanshi didn't completely betray them. She just slacked off. Han Fei knew this very well. She didn't want them to be separated, but she didn't want to fight with them. Maybe she just wanted to watch the fight from the sidelines. But this was an opportunity, and Han Fei certainly wouldn't give it up. Han Fei immediately said to her via voice transmission, "Yang Nanshi, I know it was you just now. It seems that you have listened to what I said before. Maybe I am a great enemy, but the Chu sect is even more so. If you don't want to fight, fine. I have a way. How many people from the Yang family are here?" Yang Nanshi responded very quickly, 13. Han Fei immediately said, "I will let Zhang Xuanyu escape, and the Yang family will chase after him. You don't have to fight, okay?" Yang Nanshi readily agreed, "Sure." Han Fei immediately said to Zhang Xuanyu via voice transmission, "On the opposite side, Yang Nanshi has betrayed us. I have already discussed it with her. Provoke them and take the Yang family away from the battlefield. Keep a distance. Once they really want to fight, come back immediately." Zhang Xuanyu was taken aback. When the fuck did this happen? Yang Nanshi actually betrayed us? And she even said, "Pretend to fight?" However, since it was Han Fei who said this, Zhang Xuanyu immediately understood the importance of this matter. At present, he was not very good at group battles. And Yang Nanshi was really difficult to deal with. If he could take the Yang family away from the battlefield, the pressure on Han Fei's side would definitely be greatly reduced. After all, Yang Nanshi was also a top powerhouse who ranked 5th on the Heavenly Talent list. Even if it was a one-on-one battle, she would have to take one person on his side. Chu Qingyan sneered. "Han Fei, do you know that you have no way out?" Han Fei sneered. "Good, you even changed the timeline. I really didn't expect that the Chu sect had such means." As Han Fei spoke, he said to Yang Nanshi via voice transmission, "Provoke me." Yang Nanshi immediately raised her sledgehammer and shouted, "Han Fei, you can't escape this time. Weren't you very strong before? Aren't you very difficult to fight? Let's see how you can fight against more than 80 law enforcers here." Zhang Xuanyu took the opportunity to shout, "Hey, little short. In the ideal palace, they are all hidden fishers. Believe it or not, I can stab a bunch of them with one spear." Yang Nanshi immediately despised him. "I've never seen anyone as good at bragging as you." Zhang Xuanyu laughed. "I'm bragging? It's not that I'm bragging. Believe it or not, I can not only stab a bunch of you with one spear, but I can also skin you and take you home as a slave. Believe it or not." Yang Nanshi's face turned red with anger. "Say that again?" Han Fei was speechless and thought to himself, I just asked you to provoke me, but I didn't ask you to take me home as a slave." Yang Nanshi's brain isn't very good. Perhaps she'll really be so angry that she'll smash you to death. Luo Xiaobai glanced at Han Fei, a little confused. Why did Zhang Xuanyu suddenly quarrel with Yang Nanshi? Chu Qingyan didn't panic. She knew what kind of person Yang Nanshi was. Let Zhang Xuanyu continue to provoke her. Besides, she didn't like Zhang Xuanyu and Diwu Haiguang very much. They were both very handsome, but one was more wretched than the other. Zhang Xuanyu looked at Yang Nanshi quietly and looked her up and down. "You look like a child. I'm not very interested in you. As for me, well, I still like the long-legged type. But I'm going to kill you. Yang Nanshi carried the sledgehammer and rushed towards Zhang Xuanyu. Zhang Xuanyu immediately broke free from the vines and sneered. You want to kill me? Do you think you can kill me with your small arms and legs? Luo Xiaobai said to Han Fei via voice transmission, it's too obvious. If Luo Xiaobai still didn't understand at this time, she would be stupid. However, to everyone's surprise, Yang Nanshi shouted, Yang family, follow me. I'm going to kill this guy. Chu Qingyan's face changed drastically. Yang Nanshi, did your head get hit by an ironhead fish? Why are you chasing me now? Besides, if you want to beat Zhang Xuanyu, why do you need to bring the Yang family? Before Chu Qingyan called Yang Nanshi back, Han Fei took the lead and launched the sacrificing punch at Chu Qingyan, not giving her a chance to speak. Luo Xiaobai seemed to understand something. Yang Nanshi did this on purpose, didn't she? Was she looking for a reason to leave? Luo Xiaobai immediately shouted and fell into the water. In the next moment, a large number of vines and seaweeds stretched out from the sea. And Luo Xiaobai had already used the hollow nether fish to hide her trace. Diwu Haiguang chuckled, holding a unique longbow in his hand, and drew the bow faster than ordinary people's punches. Shadowless sword currents spurted out, and it was hard to find them. Chao Qiu frowned slightly, waved his hands forward, clenched his fists, stepped out, and a god of war condensed. On the opposite side, Chu Qingyan probably knew that Yang Nanshi had really run away. However, she didn't think that Yang Nanshi would really betray them. With Yang Nanshi's intelligence, if she betrayed them, wouldn't she have been acting from the monster plant soul realm to now? If Yang Nanshi was a drama queen, she wouldn't be called Yang Nanshi. Chu Qingyan firmly believed that the traitor must still be in her group. However, the other party didn't jump out. At this moment, it was the time of the battle, so she had no time to look for him. Chu Qingyan shouted, Qingyi, Diwu Haiguang is yours. All hunters, surround and kill Luo Xiaobai. Diwu Haiguang sneered. You want to stop me? Long legs, I'm afraid you're dreaming, right? As Diwu Haiguang spoke, someone was pierced by the shadowless sword currents. It was not that the person didn't notice it, but Diwu Haiguang's arrows were too fast. At the moment he sensed the crisis, he tried to resist, but it was too late. Chu Qingyan added, Chu Hongjia, help Qingyi. Two people appeared in the crowd. One was a woman in green, holding a pair of daggers in her hands. In the blink of an eye, she slashed dozens of times in the air, knocking away dozens of shadowless arrows, expressionless. The other was an armorist with red hair and an arrogant face. As the corners of his mouth cracked, a red armored centipede coiled around his body. In the box, 8 scarlet tokens floated in the air and circled around his body. Diwu Haiguang's eyes narrowed slightly. Chu Hongjia, once ranked 7th on the heavenly talent list. Not bad, plus Li Qingyi, he's barely qualified to fight me. And me. Another woman walked out, white silk entwined in her hands, and 7 swords floated behind her. If one looked closely, they would find that the white silk did not control the swords with spiritual energy. Diwu Haiguang glanced at Han Fei. It turns out that the 7th swordsman of the Jade Fairy Palace is from your Chu family. Han Fei, it's up to you. Han Fei rolled his eyes. You only took 3? Diwu Haiguang said with a black face. 3 are enough. 1 more and I'll have to run. Han Fei, 3rd. Asking for votes. End of this chapter. That you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.